right, what's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. Thanks for tuning into my channel. My name is Simon Hill, Black American from Louisiana, coming to you live from Budapest, Hungary. It's about 7:57 p.m. where I'm at right now, May 24th, 2024. We're coming to you live from Budapest, like I said, and today we are continuing and hopefully finishing our reading of Cyber Racism, White Supremacy Online, and the New Attack on Civil Rights, written by professor, sociologist, anti-racist activist Jesse Daniels. I want to say shout out to everybody who's been reacting positively to this book review series. This is my first book that I'm reading entirely on live stream with the people while giving commentary on it. It's been an interesting reaction. I've had some interesting comments from people, great interactions in the live chat. So I want to say shout out to everybody for doing that, because this is something uncommon on YouTube. It's not often done, and I'm glad that I'm able to do it and people are reacting to it very well. I know this is still a small channel. I know my content is very niche, but I'm gonna keep grinding and going at it until this channel blows up. So y'all stay with me on the ride to the top. You feel me? So before we get into the reading today, because we're gonna read a lot. We left off in chapter 6, and hopefully we can make it to chapter 9, if not completely finish the book today. So that's the goal for today's live stream. But before I do that, before I get into the reading today, I want to jump into the comment section on my channel. Ozzy says, salute, Simon. I see you grinding. Shout out to Ozzy as well. We're finishing this book, Cyber Racism, today. Y'all stay tuned. I would love to hear the feedback from what people think about what we can do to stop the rampant anti-Black racism online, the continued proliferation of white supremacist ideas online, because this is leading to actual people's deaths. If you don't believe me, look up Brandon Tarrant. If you don't believe me, look up Peyton Gentrin. If you don't believe me, look up Dylan Roof. All of these people committed heinous atrocities against people that they viewed as other, against people that they viewed as non-white, against as people that they viewed as lesser, because of the spread of white supremacy online. All right. So speaking of white supremacy online, my comment section, Ozzy says, yes, they were all radicalized by the internet. They absolutely were. And something needs to be done about it. And I'm glad that we're reading this book, Cyber Racism, because it relates to me and my experiences being online. And it also relates to all of you. If you're watching me right now, you're online. If you're a Black person online, you've dealt with anti-Blackness online, either directly aimed at you or seen it in person, right? Or seen it online or scrolling through. You get what I'm saying? So this is something that affects us all, and it definitely needs to be talked about. But before I get into the book, I want to read my comment section. Speaking of white supremacy online, this comment section, the hell for review part, is where I get called the N-word every day. It's where every day I get threats to my life. It's every day I open up my phone, check my YouTube algorithms, my statistics, and all I get in here, of the comment section, are white supremacists threatening my life, threatening my wife, threatening my future, threatening me every single day. Right? But I still come online for y'all. I still do this work because I love it, and I do it because it's greatly important. And every now and then, I get Black viewers or people that I can identify with to some degree, or people who are open-minded in general who may not happen to be Black, leaving interesting comments, and I will always respond to them. So this comment I got here from this person really touched me, and it seemed like it was coming from a very genuine place. And this is who I make my content for. This is the reason I do what I do, for comments like this. So I'm going to be reading this comment out and responding to this person on live stream. So this was from a person named Mario Chandler 836. He says, "Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum salam to you, sir. I'm of African American. I'm an African American Muslim from Atlanta. I just discovered you recently, but quickly gobbled up your content, which I really like and appreciate. Long before learning about your experiences in Albania, I had planned a short first-time trip to Tirana and Vlore set for July, just as an off-the-beaten-path excursion ahead of extended summer stay in Spain. My concerns about Albania are additionally heightened because I'll be traveling with my young African-American son. I imagine you're super busy with your travels and blogging, but if you could spare some private conversation as I plan our trip to Albania, I would be very grateful. I could find no other way to reach you besides sending a message here. Apologies and thanks in advance. I'm Mario. Shout out to Mario right here. Beautiful comment. This was left under one of my most popular videos. Black say Albania is the most racist country that I've visited. And that's the reason I posted in my community tab. You can't tell me jack shit if you don't know what the present perfect tense means. I did not say Albania is the most racist country in the world. I did not say Albanians are all racist. I said it is the most racist country that I've visited. I have visited. And if you don't know what the present perfect tense means, what the difference is between Albania is the most racist country or it's the most racist country I've visited, you should really pick up a book and read. But in response to Mario, I encourage all black people to travel anywhere in the world that's reasonable, that's safe, that's available to us. Shout out to Avery Adams in the comments. He says we lit. So in response to Mario here, my response to any black person who wants to travel to Albania, to travel to Serbia, travel to Turkey, travel to Mauritius, any of the places that I've been in the world, I encourage you to go, regardless of what I've said. Because first and foremost, let's all remember this, guys. Let's all remember this. I am just one man on the internet. Let's all take a step back here. I am not some pompous asshole who expects people to worship me or follow my words. I am not some demagogue who is acting like I am your new cult leader or everything that comes out of my mouth is, always going to be right and exact. I am a fallible man. I am not claiming to be God. I'm not claiming to be some prophet. I'm not claiming to be all knowing, right? I do believe everything I say, and I've never lied on my channel, and I've always told the truth as I see it from my experience, but I have never once said that I am always 100% right. But what I do believe to be right is this: black people do not deserve, under any circumstances, and for no excuses at all, do we deserve to be called hard Nigger. Under no circumstances do black people deserve to be called any sort of racial slurs in any language. And it does not matter if in your language you think it's cute or it's inoffensive. For black people, we don't want to be called anything. Shut your goddamn mouth. Do not fix your lips to call us any word that starts with Z or A or K or Ha or Da or whatever language you have. Close your goddamn mouth. Have some respect. Period. Period. It is absolutely a shame and a travesty that in every country that I've been to, from my experience, I have been called a racial slur of some type, whether it be the hard or if you really want to be technical, the soft A of the N word, or their version of a racial slur. There have been times, every single country I've been to, I have been followed and harassed in the stores. When I was a single man and I was dating the foreign women of these foreign lands that I've been to, I have heard some of the most wild things about the black man's genitalia. And while, yes, I do have a big, black, glorious penis, let's not fetishize the black man's body, which is something rampant in the minds of all people around the world. Unfortunately, from my experience, this is my experience as a black person traveling. And going back to Mario's comments, listen, man, we deserve and we have the right to travel everywhere in the world. All right? We have the right. We didn't do anything to anybody on the planet, period. And so we should not be frightened, scared, or shunned away from going to certain places. Now, I'm not telling somebody to, hop on the next plane to Odessa or hop on the next plane to Rafah or go to Myanmar or to Darfur, right? I'm not telling you to go to a dangerous place. Of course, have some common sense, all right? But what I'm saying is this. While being called the N word is a problem that can happen in Tirana, you can be called the N word in Tennessee. You can be racially harassed in Austin, Texas, never mind Albania. You can be followed around the stores in New Hampshire, never mind Valore, right? Let's keep it absolutely a buck. If you are coming from America, we know how to get past white supremacists. As a black man born in America, you have a PhD already in dealing with CACs. And if you don't want to know what a CAC means, that's a crack ass cracker. If you are a black man born in America, you were born with a PhD on how to get past CACs. Period. Period. So, Mario, I know your comment is coming from a good place. It's coming from a good place. But when I broke down my experiences in Albania, I said it was the most racist place because in every city I've went, in their capital in Tirana, to the coastal city of Durrës, to the inland city of Berat, and to the southern coastal city of Vlorë, I was racially harassed, called all sorts of racial slurs, and followed around the stores, people taking out their phones, people harassing me and my wife walking out in the streets. All that happened. But is that any different than if I were living in Mississippi, if I were living in southern Florida, if I was in some rural part of Georgia, if I was in North Carolina? No, 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 no. So, Mario, have no fear. Have no fear. As a black man who looks a bit older than me, honestly, Mario, you look a bit older than me. You've navigated more facets of life than me, right? And I have respect for my elders. If you know how to navigate living in Atlanta, Georgia, and some people say Atlanta is the black Mecca. Some people say Atlanta is the place where a black man can be anything he wants to be, even a BBW with a BBL and a BBC. You know how to navigate life, period. You get what I'm saying? You get what I'm saying? So I just want you to know, Mario, if you really want to travel to Albania, do it. And you might have a better experience than me. Hell, you might not get racially harassed at all. But please, I want to make this clear. We as black people should not discount other people's experiences. If Mario goes to Albania and nothing that happened to Simon Hill keeps it true happens to Mario Chandler 836, let's not then say Simon Hill was lying. Let's not then say Simon Hill is over blowing things out of proportion. Because number one, I was not lying. I caught it on video multiple times when I was called the N word. I caught it on video, them spray painting the N word on walls. I caught it on video of me approaching people and saying, please, why are you calling me the N word? You get what I'm saying? All of that did happen, and there's video proof of it. So I don't care if anybody calls me a liar because I know the truth. My wife knows the truth, and God knows the truth for real. But listen, we're all going to have different experiences. There's some black folks that love living in Louisiana. And all I got to say about Louisiana is that it's hell on earth. You get what I'm saying? But I'm not going to discount his experience because he might be balling out of control and have everything a young nigga ever wanted living in Louisiana. Me, I couldn't do it. It's not me. It's not me. You get what I'm saying? I hope that's absolutely clear. So, Mario Chandler, I encourage you, your son, to do whatever the hell you want. Do not be afraid about racial slurs. Do not be afraid about these racist, stupid Albanians who are there. Go and travel, go and see. But I do believe there is a high probability, Mario, that you will go to Albania and get called racial slurs, followed around the stores, people videotaping you, shaking their head disapprovingly when they see you walking down the street. I think that is a high probability that will happen, right? Because that happened to me in multiple cities. I could understand one city, I could understand one scenario, but literally the first day I landed in Tirana, little children who were 5, 6, 7 years old were pointing at me and saying, "That's a nigga, that's a nigga, that's a nigga." You get what I'm saying? So, yeah. Anyway, Ozzy and Avery are talking in the comments, asking each other about where they want to go. Ozzy said, "Did Albanians assume your wife is Albanian?" In the comment section, Ozzy, people said that my wife looks Albanian. Then another group of people said, "No, my wife looks Jewish." Uh, I think by and large, because she is white adjacent or dim or white, whatever you want to call her, and the Albanians by and large are white. So yeah, they might assume that she was Albanian because they do have different. Well, the Albanians by and large look like Turkish people, but I'm telling you, man, when you go to Albania, you'll see some of the biggest noses you've ever seen. Everybody had a huge nose out to here, out to here. I swear to God. I swear to God. If they turned their face this way, they'd knock over my water bottle. And all their women got big ass titties. All the Albanian women I saw got big ass titties and big noses. So that's all I really got to say. Shout out to Mario Chandler 836 for leaving this comment. Once again, shout out to all the black people that come into my comment section. I do my channel for y'all. This is the realest, rawest, blackest YouTube channel, and I appreciate people like this who come into my comment section. I hope Mario sees this. I hope he turns on the live stream and sees my response to him. But anyway, continuing our reading of Cyber Racism by Jesse Daniels. Hopefully, we'll finish this book. This is going to be a very long live stream, so come on, get some popcorn, get a beer, get a glass of wine. We might be reading for a few hours. I might be popping shit for the next, 4 or 5 hours because it's Friday. I cleared out my schedule. I only got a class at like 12 o'clock and then I'm done today. So I'm out here with the people. I'm chilling with y'all. So let's get into it. In our last class session reading, whatever you want to call it, we were talking about how the white supremacists gather online and how they're able to grow their platforms, and some white supremacist online platforms that failed and went the way of yesteryear, and how some white supremacist websites like Stormfront were able to grow and develop and continue to foster a sense of community. And in some ways that were somewhat like very simple, right? Because the white supremacists are all unified in their hatred towards people that are non-whites and their death cult that they have for the world. But it's still a community that has to be kept together on Stormfront, on 4chan, on certain segments of Twitter. And so the way to keep community engagement is through simple things, right? So like the guy who moderates Stormfront was creating threads on the forum and saying, hey guys, who likes Coca-Cola? Hey man, Sprite or Dr. Pepper, right? Man, Nabisco crunchy or Nabisco chewy, right? Like they're asking like basic questions, like stuff that can get people engaged, regular stuff that gets people engaged, which I find interesting, right? And Jesse finished off the chapter that we read last time with a very good point that online you have active communities of white supremacists, people that are engaged in this sort of discourse and spreading their misinformation and finding other people that share their wicked evil ideals. But there is no counterbalance to that. There is no forum, there is no place where people just congregate and talk about ways to create an anti-racist society, ways to create a society that is past marginalizing other people, ways to create a more equitable society. There's no like counter to Stormfront. Maybe you could say Black Twitter, but Black Twitter is just about spreading like funny memes and like gender war discourse and stuff like that. There is no counter like community online of people that are like actively anti-racist or people that want to fight the white supremacists. So it's a very interesting dynamic. While some of the websites, of course, that are bigger, right? And by the way, there's only like 5 or 4 major websites: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and whatever you want to fill in blank in for number 4, right? You could say Google or something like that. But basically, social media has taken over the internet. But on these platforms where we are, there is no community that's centered around more justice, more equality. And yeah, this is another thing like that really needs to be discussed. And also, one interesting thing that we read last time is that some of the white supremacists have very differing views about religion and about Christianity. Like the white supremacists, some of them left Christianity entirely because they believe, what? How can we as white men worship a brown Jew who lived in the Middle East, who told us to love everybody and love our neighbor, right? And literally, we hate people who are non-whites. So it doesn't make sense. It sounds like Jewish trickery to them, right? This is how some white supremacists view Christianity. And there was one guy, who I believe his name was Hale. He started a new religion centered around white supremacy where it was called creativity. And he wrote a book called The White Man's Bible. And in The White Man's Bible, the goal is just to see whiteness as the end all be all of human existence, the most perfect thing that the number one creator created. And Hale tried to pass his, religion on, and it was actually growing and developing. But he called his church the World Church of the Creator, and that counteracted with that ran into opposition with a normal Christian denomination that called themselves the World Christian Church of the Creator. And they went to court, and Hale lost. And when Hale lost in court, the white supremacists killed the judge's family. That was the most shocking thing I've read in this book. Like, out of all the things that we've read about white supremacists and all the wicked, sick things that they have done, one of the most vile things I've ever heard of is that this guy, this white supremacist, lost a civil court case, not even a criminal court case. He lost a civil court case, and so him and his white supremacist brethren murdered the judge's family in the United States of America. Let's repeat that. A white supremacist lost a civil court case because he had to change the name of his wicked, evil church. And so he murdered the family of a sitting judge in the United States of America. And people tell me in my comment section that white supremacy and racism is long gone. There is no such thing as this anymore. And this happened in the 90s. And let's not forget Timothy McVeigh blew up a federal building over some stupid white supremacist beliefs. Are we serious now? This shit is real. This shit is real. And nobody wants to talk about this. We want to get online and talk about gender wars. We want to get online and talk about Diddy and Cassie. We want to get online and talk about the next stupid thing talking about bringing about the caliphate. And one of them lost their civil court case and then they murdered the family of a judge. What do you think the U.S. government, how do you think they would react to like, Muslims in general in America? Bro, there will be pogroms in America. We might literally have concentration camps of Muslims, right? But the white supremacists are doing this today, bro. And it's literally something that is like insane. That is not it is not spoken about more. Literally, I'm so shocked. I'm so shocked. And apparently, y'all are so shocked too because it's so quiet in my comment section. Anyway, let's continue reading today. We're gonna be popping a lot of shit. We're gonna pop a lot of shit today. So let's get to it. So, continuing here in chapter 6, understanding white supremacist groups' transition to digital media. There is a great deal of variation in white supremacist groups' transition from print to the digital era, and this has to do with a variety of factors relating to social movement organizational resources. White supremacist ideology and the internet. Websites do not exist apart from the people or organizations that support them. So, the first requirement for the transition from print to digital media is access to organizational resources such as stable leadership, a small amount of capital to invest in the necessary hardware, software, and web hosting services, and members or volunteers or hired hands with the technical knowledge to coordinate all these. So, part of understanding the range of success has to do with the variation in mobilizing social movement resources, such as people, money, and in the digital era, technology. The second reason for the variation has to do with different types of white supremacist ideology within the movement. The white supremacist movement is notoriously sectarian, and there are frequent battles over the minutiae of ideological debates. Religion is a frequent point of disagreement, as when Ben Klassen wanted to retire from his Church of the Creator operation and approached Tom Metzger about taking it over, only to have Metzger refuse because he is opposed to religion, even when the white race is the object of worship. In light of these sorts of turf wars, it is telling the NAAWP, the National Association for the Advancement of White People, that was started by David Duke. Remember, that was yesterday's live stream, and I said that sounds like a Dave Chappelle skit. Anyway, continuing here. In light of these sorts of turf wars, it is telling that the NAAWP failed to make the transition from print to digital media because of an internecine feud that was never resolved. The transitions from print to digital media in the middle range, the copy paste and the C3 sites have managed to maintain a web presence through their ability to mobilize the necessary resources, but have not grown at anything like the pace of Stormfront because they have remained ideologically isolated from others in the movement. Stormfront owes much of its ability to attract and retain a large number of registered users to the fact that it pitches a very broad ideological tent and tries to include as many variations of white supremacy under that tent as possible. In addition to looking at the within group differences among all those who previously published in print, it is important to examine the sharp distinctions between them and Stormfront, which did not have a print incarnation. All 5 organizations that I examined in print shared a conceptualization of the internet as primarily a mechanism for one-way transfers of information. This is evident in the failed attempts of the 404 sites and in the literal translations of the copy-paste sites. Even Anton Metzger's C3 site has many elements of his newsletter, such as the racist line drawings and jokes that are reproduced wholesale from his printed newsletters. This assumption about the internet is rooted in the way previous forms of media, such as broadcast or print, work based on a one-to-many model. But this assumption seems to have constricted their view of the possibilities of the internet for new and innovative approaches to social movement discourse. The question remains, though, as to why Stormfront has been so successful in terms of generating traffic when other attempts at white supremacy online, bound to print media in significant ways, have failed to or have received much less traffic. Basically, what they're talking about here, for anybody who doesn't know, in our last reading, some of the white supremacists who are publishing stuff about their ideologies online, before the internet, sorry, some of the white supremacists who were publishing their stuff in brochures, newspapers, books, and stuff like that, when the internet came, some of them were able to adapt and some of them weren't, right? So some guys were just basically reprinting their newspapers or their old ass books or brochures online, like copy paste style. Other people tried to create websites and create multiple domains, but the only one that really seemed to stand the test of time is Stormfront, because it's not strictly about one type of white supremacist belief. It's just large and big tent, like the Republican Party. Within the Republican Party, you have, those fiscal conservatives, and then you have Christian nationalists. Within the Democratic Party, you have, Greens and, far left socialists, and then you have, neoliberal hawks and stuff like that, like the Joe Biden types. So yeah, it's a big tent, which allows for more discussion, more interaction, more conflict, and people love conflict online. So that's how Stormfront and some other segments of white supremacy online were able to flourish. Keep in mind, this book was written back in 2009, so a lot has changed. Social media has made a lot of these websites sort of like obsolete. Now, I'm pretty sure like there are more open white supremacists on Twitter than on actual Stormfront, just because of how large the site is and because of what Elon Musk has done to the website. Also, another thing we have to talk about is the NAAWP. David Duke's organization fell apart because basically white men can't get along. I made this point in my last live stream. Basically, the white supremacists like to say black men are violent, black men can't organize, black men need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. But every time the real white supremacists, the guys who actually believe that whites are better than other groups of people, they can't even get it together. Within their groups, all they have are sexual deviants, pedophiles, molesters, violent people who cannot even take losing a civil court case without murdering a judge. You get what I'm saying? Like, the white supremacists actually in these white supremacist organizations are some of the scummiest people on the planet. And so, yeah, David Duke's organization falling apart actually made me very, very happy. And it goes to show that their ideas are really stupid, because if the whites were actually supreme, they would be able to live their dreams. Continuing here. So, Stormfront succeeds because the people who participate in this form of white supremacy online seek it out. They return because it offers them something meaningful. People seek out Stormfront because it resonates with a white racial frame, and they return because they enjoy a sense of community built on a collective white identity. For a virtual community such as Stormfront to thrive, people have to not only seek it out, they also have to invest time and energy in order to sustain it. Also, Stormfront's remarkable success at creating and sustaining a virtual community suggests a very different online dynamic than the brochures, sites, or even Metzger's moderately interactive site that mainly showcases racist propaganda. The presence of a long-running and robust virtual community for white pride worldwide, quote unquote, suggests that this online space offers something that a large and growing number of people desire and find worth returning to repeatedly. People that participate at Stormfront can be sure they will find other people who share their value of whiteness as a separate and superior racial identity and can freely express that idea and have it affirmed by others. Old and new media forms of white supremacy coverage. This investigation into the transition of white supremacist ideology from print to digital media is by no means exhaustive, but one that is meant to offer a broader framework for similar analysis of other social movements' transition into digital media, using a different social movements discourse, locating a physical archive of that movement's documents prior to 1993 or so could supply a sample for the print print-only analysis. Then that analysis could be analyzed alongside contemporary digital media versions of the movement's discourse. Such an analysis would expand our understanding of both digital media and social movement discourse. While I see this as a worthwhile and much needed area of research, I do not want to overstate the disparateness of old print media and new digital media, for these forms are increasingly converging. The internet represents an important transformation in a number of ways, not the least of which is how people create, publish, and distribute social movement discourse. Yet it would be a mistake to draw a broad line of distinction between print and digital media as if these were discrete categories. They are not. Ed Fields, for example, uses his website, digital media, to sell his newspaper, print media, not unlike mainstream publications in the digital era. For example, magazines and newspapers now have an online presence where you can also sign up for print-based subscription. Several of the sites, robskkkk.com, metzgersresist.org, and blackstormfront.org, include a variety of multimedia elements that incorporate old and new media forms of white supremacy. Stormfront has a number of discussion threads dedicated to mainstream popular offer detailed analysis of these cultural products through a rather matter-of-factly racist interpretive lens. I wonder how Storm reviewed like Book of Clarence. I wonder how the racist reviewed like American Fiction. That would be hilarious. I would like to. That's something. Hey, if anybody wants to do that for me, somebody send me the link to like Stormfront reviewing. I don't know. Mea Culpa, Tyler Perry's Mea Culpa, as reviewed by Stormfront. That would be hilarious. I would love to see that. I would love to see Bad Boys 4, Bad Boys for Life, Bad Boys for Life, reviewed by Stormfront. That would be hilarious. I would love to hear that. All right. Sorry. I'm continuing here. In 2001, someone from COTC, COTC is the Church of the Creator. That's the racist religion that was created by one of the guys earlier. I believe his name was Metzger or Hale, I forgot. So someone from COTC cross-posted a link from a creator website onto Stormfront. The link included Leni Riefenstahl's classic documentary, Triumph of the Will, online in its entirety and available for download. All of these are examples of what Henry Jenkins refers to as convergence culture, which represents as a paradigm shift within the information age in which media flows across platforms. There is an interdependence of communication systems, and multiple methods are used to access content. Riefenstahl's film is old media printed on celluloid, converging with new media made available online. Thus, rather than think in terms of print as completely separate from digital media, the two are converging together in new ways. Even white supremacists like Tom Robb, who created one of the clunky copy-paste websites that my student in the computer lab encountered in 1998, are aware of the multiple forms of media converging in the information age and the place of white supremacy online within it. So when she's talking about one of her students saw one of those racist websites, basically this lady, Jessie Daniels, she's a university professor, and she was making her students go to the computer lab to look up information on the civil rights movement. And one of her students went to kkk.com and then saw racist images on kkk.com, of course. And yeah, the kid pointed at it and laughed, and that's what she's referring to. Go watch the previous live stream to learn about that. But anyway, so Rob makes reference to these multiple media forms on the FAQ, frequently asked questions page on his website. In the quotation that opens this chapter, Rob refers to a hypothetical individual who, quote unquote, may watch a ridiculous Hollywood movie. My wife is twerking. And may watch a ridiculous Hollywood movie or watch the Jerry Springer show, and based on that information, claim to have some knowledge of the Klan. Rob challenges this way of knowing, contrasting it with an old media, print-based forms of gaining knowledge. He grumbles, they go to the library and pick up a book written by someone who has his own agenda, quote unquote. Rob offers an alternative means of knowing by going to his website, a path that leads, quote unquote, straight to the source. And presumably, this is what my student was doing in the lab that day when he typed kkk.com into the browser window. In the following chapter, I address the type of site my other students stumbled upon when looking for information on civil rights, cloaked sites. Right. And when she's talking about civil rights cloak sites, like she's saying, like, online, you might look up, hey, give me some information about Martin Luther King, or give me some information about the Montgomery bus boycott or something, right? Somebody might go to some website and they're scrolling through the information, and they might see, wait, what? Martin Luther King killed puppies in his free time? What, Martin Luther King secretly lusted after white women? You get what I'm saying? Like the bus boycott was all about, smoking crack on the back of the bus. You get what I'm saying? Like there's those type of websites out there that claim to be like neutral, but then secretly, are feeding that sort of, misinformation to people online. And that's something we have to look out for, when it comes to white supremacy continuing to spread on the internet. So let's jump here. Conclusion. White supremacy in the print only era included the voices of a few white men who represented the leadership of the movement. Now, as the message has been converted into digital media, white supremacy online is increasingly multivocal and less one dimensional than when it relied primarily on printed newsletters for movement communication. In some ways, the participation of women in white supremacy online is more pronounced and more noticeable than in the print only era. Yet, white male supremacists remain the primary producers, publishers, and architects who have led the charges of translating white supremacy into the digital era. They don't know that the white supremacist ladies, they're on Etsy, they're on Pinterest. Anyway, it is important to note that not all white supremacist organizations or individuals have been successful in translating their rhetoric onto the internet. A number of those who publish printed newsletters simply failed to understand either the mechanics of how to establish and maintain a web presence or failed to see its value for their cause. The translation of printed text to new media, despite hyperbolic references to materials being available at the quote unquote flick of a switch, can be challenging, even daunting task, causing even greater consternation, as anyone who works in the internet industry can attest, is figuring out how to drive traffic to a site. Internet marketers talk about this in terms of eyeballs, as in how many eyeballs can we get to the site. And indeed, an entire cottage industry has sprung up of internet marketers offering search engine optimization, the industry's term for boosting a particular site's ranking in most search engines in order to maximize the number of eyeballs that sees it. Given the complex and often mysterious algorithms that many search engines use, these consultants are well paid for their services. My point in raising this here is to suggest that directing web traffic to an individual website is a complicated business. Thus, the rather simplistic notion that white supremacists can simply put up a plain text brochure site and successfully recruit scores of new members is a misunderstanding of how the web works. Basically, what she's saying here is like a lot of the, let's keep it absolutely real. She didn't say this in the book, but we can all read through the lines. A lot of the guys who were publishing, white supremacist newspapers and brochures in the 90s, they were 45, 50, 60, middle-aged white men. And middle-aged white men, by and large, even if they knew that the internet was going to change the world, didn't know how to use it. There are still old people today who don't know how to turn on the computer. There are still some people today who say, I got to charge up the internet before I use it. Or they unplug. Some old people literally still unplug everything in their house when they go to sleep because they say, we don't want the thunder to get in the house. You get what I'm saying? Like, there are some old people who still don't know, and let's keep it absolutely real. Like, the white supremacists in the 90s, few of them could transition into the digital era, right? Because it's hard. You can't just put up a website of your, scanning from FedEx or from or from Office Depot of your racist manifestos from the 90s and expect people to just come to the website, right? Like people only come to the websites now if they can actually talk shit to other people online and see some pornography every now and then. That's what every website is based on. Facts. Facts, facts. Every website now, because there's only 4 or 5 websites, think about it: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. All of them incorporate a little bit of pornography in it, because you go on Instagram, all you see are TNA. And then when you come on YouTube, you might see some TNA. And then also in the comment section, people are talking shit to each other. Because this is what, the people above us have realized that's what people like the most. People like drama, people like fights, people like the fuckery, and people like pornography online. And the white supremacists, a lot of them couldn't do it because a lot of them don't get pussy. And the people they want to fight with just ignore them most of the time. But we shouldn't ignore them because they're dangerous. They're literally dangerous. So, continuing here into the book, still, other white supremacist organizations and individuals have successfully translated their movement into the digital era. And it is worth noting some of the reasons for this success and what it can tell us about racism and the internet. The quasi private and overtly violent racism of Tom Metzger's Resist.com falls in the middle range of white supremacist organizations that have successfully converted their print endeavors into a web resource. Metzger, like many of his brethren, has primarily established a copy paste website that reproduces wholesale many of the features of his previous newsletter, White Aryan Resistance, quote unquote. The difference here is that Metzger has been able to use the web to merge in one place several other media forms, including his radio broadcast and telephone hotline. The internet also offers Metzger the opportunity for quasi private communication and command and control with loyal followers intent on violence. Given that Metzger has once already been found liable in a civil case for inciting racial violence, the threat of violence from a site like Metzger's poses a real danger to those he counts as his enemies. While the overt racist rhetoric that Metzger airs on his site's public forum may be considered passe among many middle-class whites, the fact that they can access and possibly laugh at Metzger's racist quote-unquote jokes in private is consistent with the data indicating how whites who are not involved in organized racism behave in private. Backstage settings. In terms of attracting web traffic, Metzger's site is not nearly as successful as the virtual community at Stormfront. A successful virtual community of any kind with over 100,000 visitors is difficult to achieve. The fact that Stormfront has been able to accomplish this feat speaks in part to a general need among human beings for community, and specifically it speaks to the fact that Stormfront is meeting a real desire among its participants for a community that values whiteness and white identity above all else. By retreating into the white-dominated chimera, participants at Stormfront produce and validate knowledge claims that affirm the values of whiteness by drawing on an epistemological tradition that stakes a claim on truth with the intended goal of undermining the hard-won political value of racial equality. Basically, what she's saying here is that, Stormfront and any successful white supremacist site is still, one in a million. Because if it was very easy to get 100,000 people on a website, 100,000 people on any sort of social platform, everybody would do it instantly. And it's extremely hard. It's extremely hard to get anybody to put their eyeballs on something longer than 2 seconds, right? Like it is online, right? So, yeah, very, very, very fascinating chapter right here. Chapter 6 was definitely good. Chapter 5 was good as well. I will not be reading the notes, but for anybody who wants to read the notes, please buy the book. You can buy the book online and read it yourself for only the humble price of $48.79. Shout out to Jesse Daniels. But if you need the hookup on books, I got the website. Holla at me. I got the hookup. Holla if you hear me. Hey, y'all don't know that. Y'all don't know that. Y'all too young for that. Anyway, chapter 7, cyber lies. Cyber lies. Liza Minnelli. Cyber lies. Cloaked websites. Let's go. This is what I'm talking about here. I'm gonna holler at you in the comments, man. If anybody wants to get any book, my guy Ozzy just asked, you want to get a book for free? Just go here. libgen.is. That's your hookup. That's your hookup. Thank me later. Thank me later. Thank me later. All right. Cyber lies, cloaked websites. So, fascist propaganda has by now come to be a profession, as it were, a livelihood. It had plenty of time to test the effectiveness of various appeals, and only the most catchy ones have survived. Their effectiveness is itself a function of the psychology of consumers. The surviving appeals have been standardized, similar to the advertising slogans, which prove to be the most valuable in the promotion of business. Propaganda analysis is an antidote to the excesses of the information age, says Aaron Delwich, So, shortly after the biopolitical disaster that followed Hurricane Katrina in August 2005, a wide constellation of websites with domain names like KatrinaFamilies.com and ParishDonations.com appeared on the internet featuring digital photos of distressed people in the flooded Gulf Coast region. Beyond the digital photographs exclusively featuring white people, the sites contained no overtly white supremacist or racist rhetoric and appeared to be legitimate appeals to help people in the devastated coastal area. Web traffic to those sites was redirected to a single site, internetdonations.org, which also appeared to be a rather generic site, except for the fact that the domain name was registered to Frank Weltner, a white supremacist based in St. Louis, Missouri. The state I'm so pissed. I cannot wait to give my commentary. Hold on. The state of Missouri sued Weltner, a member of the neo-Nazi National Alliance, in September 2005 for violating state fund raising law and for omitting the material fact that the ultimate company behind the defendant's website supports white supremacy. Weltner's Katrina related sites are no longer on the internet because of the prohibition in Missouri's fundraising law, but he continues to maintain a number of other websites, including the overtly anti Semitic JewWatch.com and the cloaked sites AmericanCivilRightsReview.com. All right, let me talk about this, man. As a Louisianian, I gotta say this. Hurricane Katrina was one of the worst natural disasters that I remember in my lifetime. That was the first time that I remember, like, vividly, seeing all those black people on roofs, hearing about people drowning, hearing about the levees blow up in Louisiana, hearing the stories and knowing the truth that there were white supremacist gangs running around New Orleans, shooting black people and passing out guns to other white vigilantes to murder black people in Louisiana when Hurricane Katrina happened, and to hear about this white guy, this literal white supremacist, Frank Weltner, created a website called what was it called? It was called internetdonations.org and katrinafamilies.com and parish donations. For people that don't know, in Louisiana we have parishes, not counties. And literally he was trying to fundraise for his white supremacist cause, literally trying to use Hurricane Katrina as a means to trick people into donating to his white supremacist movement. Meanwhile, in actual Louisiana, a ton of black people were stuck in the Superdome with no lights, no water, shitting in coolers, fighting over bread, getting called looters on national TV, having other white folks deputize each other, passing out shotguns and pistols, and shooting black folks in the back for just trying to run up in Walmart and get stuff to eat to feed their families during Hurricane Katrina. I'll vividly remember Hurricane Katrina, and I'll always remember all those New Orleans kids coming up into Monroe and beating the brakes off of everybody in our high school. Shit was wild. Shit was wild. It was what a time to be alive. They'll never. My generation is the trillist. I swear to God, my generation is the trillist. But God damn, the white supremacists are evil. Literally, they are literally wicked and evil. What type of sick person does that? That's like right now. Like a Jewish person says, they creates a website that says donate to Gazan families, right? Meanwhile, all that money goes into funding like settlements in the West Bank. Like, what type of sick, evil person does that? Like, how wicked do you have to be? This is the picture of the website right here, KatrinaFamilies.com. And it took it took the state of Missouri, by the way, one of the most racist states in the nation. It took literally one of the even the whites, even the racist whites in Missouri said, "Whoa, now that's too much. That's wild. That's wild, man." I'm telling y'all, man. Y'all want to come online and talk about BBL Drizzy? Y'all want to come online and talk about Diddy smacking Cassie back into the Stone Age? But y'all ain't talking about the white supremacists literally scamming people to fund their causes. Think about how many charities there might be out there where people are actually funneling this money to dark groups like this. That's wild. That's wild, man. Man, you know what they say? The quickest way to hide some knowledge from a nigga is in a book. But we cracking open the books today, baby. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. This is sick. This is absolutely sick. All right, continuing here. The emergence of websites such as Weltner's KatrinaFamilies.com and AmericanCivilRightsReview.com are illustrative of one aspect of white supremacy online: the emergence of hard to detect racist propaganda in the digital era. While many writers have expressed much concern that unsuspecting internet users are in danger of being recruited into white supremacist groups online, in my view, these sites present a different kind of danger. Rather than being lured into social movement participation through overt white supremacist sites, such as those discussed in the previous chapter, it is much more likely that the casual web user will inadvertently encounter white supremacy through cloaked websites. I define cloaked websites to be those published by individuals or groups who conceal authorship or intention in order to deliberately disguise a hidden political agenda. Fox News, Fox News, the Daily Wire, Twitter. Those are all cloaked websites. We got a phrase now. We got a phrase now. We got a phrase now. Anytime somebody pops up, like what's his name? What's the guy's name? PragerU. PragerU is a cloaked website. Let's keep it a buck. PragerU, Fox News, most of Twitter, cloaked websites. These are cloaked websites because think about this. Cloaked websites are those that publish information where they conceal authorship or conceal intention. Think about this. When the Daily Wire publishes an article that says slavery wasn't that bad, or when PragerU publishes a video that says the civil rights movement was a mistake, what is their real intention here? That's a cloaked website. That's a cloaked website. Anyway, the danger in cloaked websites is less about recruitment into social movement organizations within organized racism and more about a threat to the cultural value of racial equality. Cloaked sites call into question the value of racial equality by challenging the epistemological basis of hard won political truths about the civil rights era, about the Holocaust, and even about the end of slavery. By that I mean that the cultural values about race, racism, and racial equality that many consider to be settled by the victories of the civil rights movement, going back to the end of slavery, are in fact open for debate once again, as white supremacy online offers an alternative way of presenting, publishing, and debating ideas that take issue with these cultural values. Taken together, this alternative way of presenting, publishing, and debating ideas constitutes an alternative way of knowing, that is, an alternative epistemology. It is this epistemological threat to the cultural value of racial equality, along with the absence of both critical thinking about race and a vibrant movement toward racial equality, that I see as the most insidious threat posed by white supremacy online, a threat that is especially pernicious for generations born after the civil rights era. Before I examine how young people make sense of cloaked white supremacy when they encounter it online, which I do in the next chapter, I analyze cloaked websites in some detail. In this chapter, I explore a wide variety of examples of cloaked websites and situate them within the study of propaganda more generally, and then I turn to the specific issue of racist propaganda in a digital era. Basically, what she's saying here is that, these cloaked websites are not overtly racist like stormfront.org or, davidduke.com or kkk.com, but their cloaked nature of their intention and the information that they disseminate sort of makes people get more in line with a white racial frame that's to the radical right, the fascist right, pure white supremacy, and that ideology in and of itself. So that's what she's trying to say here. Like, these websites are not going to say, the N words are coming to take your daughter's bussy. Yeah, the N words are not coming to take your job, and the Mexicans aren't hopping the fence to destroy Western civilization. But they're saying stuff like, we need a tougher immigration stance. We should send them back to their countries. They start talking about the bell curve and black intelligence in relation to race and stuff like that. So when they're they're challenging like basic things that most scientists, most rational people, most normal people can agree on. They slowly chip away at those ideas in their intention to cloak their true message about white supremacy, right? So that's very interesting. I like this term, cloaked websites. I swear to God, I'm gonna start calling everybody cloaked. Y'all cloaked on these websites now. I'm picking up this language. Anyway, let's continue. Cloaked websites, propaganda in the digital era. Cloaked websites are similar to previous versions of print and electronic media propaganda in which the authorship, source, or intention of a publication or broadcast is obscured. So called black quote unquote propaganda is false material in which the source is disguised. Quote unquote gray propaganda is that in which the source is not identified. And quote unquote white propaganda is that in which the real source is identified. For example, in a study of revolutionary and counter revolutionary electronic communication using the radio, the authors distinguish between these three types of propaganda: white propaganda, in which stations openly identify themselves, for example, Radio Free Europe; gray propaganda, in which stations are purportedly operated by dissident groups within a country, although actually they might be located in another nation. For example, the supposedly anti-Castro La Voz del Cid, right? And three, black propaganda stations, which transmit broadcasts by one side disguised as broadcast by another. For example, the Lord Ha Ha broadcast of the English voice of Nazi Germany. This is very interesting. I've never heard about the different types of propaganda. White propaganda, right? Basically, Radio Free Europe, they announce where they're from. Gray propaganda, you might think it's coming from one place, but it's actually coming from another. And black propaganda, where you don't know who the authors are, and it could be somebody else pretending to be somebody else, right? Which is unfortunately, right, like some people online or some famous YouTube channels who hide their identity, especially in the black grassroots and stuff like that, or the black intelligentsia online and stuff. But continuing here, very interesting, the different types of propaganda. So while the crudely color coded designation of white, gray, and black propaganda are problematic linguistic constructions, the distinctions drawn by these conceptualizations are useful for understanding cloaked websites. Websites like radio broadcasts or printed media can be used to advance the goals of propagandists. And as with black and gray propaganda, cloaked websites are rendered more effective precisely because they conceal their intention. There has been a good deal of attention, both in the mainstream press and in scholarly journals, to the use of the internet to advance political agendas in support of marginalized subcultures. Generally, this is seen as a good thing because of the participatory aspects of the face of large corporate monopolies controlling media. Yet relatively little has been written about websites that intentionally conceal, disguise, or obfuscate their authorship in order to advance a political agenda. A few examples of cloaked websites other than those published by white supremacists follow to illustrate my point. Water break. All right. Cloaked websites. Some examples. Cloaked websites arise from a variety of political agendas. Perhaps the most widely known example of a cloaked site is that of www.georgewbush.com. Wow, gwbush.com. All right, I don't know where this is going. I'm excited. Which was set up in the early days of the Junior Bush's first presidential campaign. The activist group behind this project, known collectively as R Trademark ARC, all right, holds views that would be considered far left wing on the American political landscape, as they are primarily interested in drawing attention to the system of corporate power and challenging the legal convention in the United States of corporate personhood. This cloaked site was very effective in part because of the clever use of a domain name similar to the official campaign's URL, and in part because it used the exact same graphics from the official site. Initially, a number of reporters were taken in by the site and phoned the Bush campaign to ask for clarification on policy issues. Bush and his campaign advisors objected strenuously to the site, going so far as to issue a cease and desist letter to the site's creators and file a complaint with the Federal Election Committee. And it was in response to this cloaked site that George W. Bush twice remarked that there ought to be limits to freedom. One of the ironies here is that the GeorgeWBush.com site was arguably more engaged with actual issues such as corporate responsibility and the war on drugs than was the official Bush campaign site. Very interesting. So that's an example of this type of propaganda yeah, and that was a cloaked website that was, I believe it was doing like black propaganda. So George W. Bush, of course, was like a right wing president. No Child Left Behind, war in Iraq, war in Afghanistan. Created the housing bubble by deregulating the markets. So that's why the 2008 financial crisis happened. All that sort of stuff. And so some left wing activists create a website called GeorgeWBush.com and tries to challenge the war on drugs, tries to challenge, corporate irresponsibility or the lack of corporate responsibility in certain cases. And so George W. Bush hears about it, his administration hears about it, and they say, we're going to send our lawyers to send a cease and desist to this website. And then even George Bush said there ought to be some limits to freedom, right? Let's keep it real, and let's always remember the conservatives, the Republicans, they like to talk a big game about limited government. They like to talk a big game about personal responsibility. They want to talk a big game about getting the government out of your business. But what did George Bush do? What was George Bush's number one piece of legislature? The Patriot Act, my niggas. The Patriot Act. The act that says the government can spy on all of our emails and in our phones. What are y'all talking about? God, young people are so stupid. The people that support those type of radical, crazy, conservative Republicans who talk about personal liberty, personal freedom, get the government out of my business. Meanwhile, you don't care that the government knows about all the cuck porn that you watch. You don't care that the government has read every single Gmail message you've ever sent. Y'all don't care about that, though. Y'all don't care about that. Y'all don't care about that. Let's talk about Cassie's booty. Hey, guys, I heard Erica Badu got a BBL. That's what we want to talk about online now. Anyway, I'm continuing here. On the other side of the political spectrum, from the RTM ARC activists, corporations utilize cloaked websites to counter criticisms of corporate practices and to give the appearance of grassroots support, a practice known as astroturfing. In 2006, corporate giant Walmart launched Working Families for Walmart, for Walmart.com, and paidcritic.com, two thinly cloaked sites written by public relations firm Edelman, employed by Walmart. Walmart launched this aggressive online disinformation campaign after receiving scathing criticisms for its global business practices from a number of sources. Jumping into the comments here, Akdena Shaheen Hill says, the American right is so weird for me because they have some ideas that are similar to the Turkish left. Very interesting, Akdi. You got to break that down. How is the American right similar to the Turkish left? Does the Turkish left want to look into people's phones and emails? Does the Turkish left hate other foreigners and stuff like that? Do they want to build the wall and kick out the immigrants? You got to explain that. You got to build on that because we don't know what the hell you talking about. You got to remember my audience is like they're smarter than average, but we got to admit our ignorance. You get what I'm saying? Anyway, so while even a casual internet user is sure to pick up of the shill-like tone of the corporate rhetoric on this site, the company nevertheless tries to disguise its involvement with this text on the About You's page. Working Families for Walmart is a group of leaders from a variety of backgrounds and communities all across America, quote unquote. This site describes this mission as fostering open and honest dialogue with elected officials, opinion makers, and community leaders that conveys the positive contributions of Walmart to working families. It is deeply ironic, not to mention disingenuous, that a site that hides its intention and authorship states that its mission is to foster honest dialogue. Perhaps most brazen here is the second site, which attempts to discredit any critics of Walmart by labeling them paid critics when in fact, it is Walmart who is paying people to write and publish both sites. This is profoundly cynical move on the part of Walmart and Edelman that betrays their assumption about the lack of sophistication of Walmart customers, whom they presume will be duped by the cloaked sites. By establishing these cloaked sites, Walmart and Edelman are attempting to manipulate customers into ignoring their criticisms, regarding the company more favorably, and thus continuing to spend money there. And they are betting they will be very little resistance. Very wild that a corporation like Walmart, with all the money in the world, it says something when you got to pay people to defend your reputation, right? Like I can fight my own battles. Even if I was a billionaire, I wouldn't have a publicist. I don't need a publicist. I can stand on my own too, and I can stand on my words, right? And if I make a mistake, I can say I'm sorry. But Walmart, because they're such an evil corporation, they have to create two websites. They create a website where they're paying people to write how great it is to work for $7.25 an hour and how Walmart is great for working families. And then at the same time, they have to create another website that says, anybody who attacks Walmart is a paid Russian bot shill, a communist, evil bastard devil. You get what I'm saying? So very wild, very wild. Anyway, jumping into the comments here, Dennis Shaheen Hill says, Turkish left believes the government is in our business too much, in our houses, our phones, etc., making decisions for us and trying to hypnotize us with Islam. Both sides have refugees or immigrants that come from the south of Turkey, especially from the Arab world. But left started complaining about immigrants because Erdogan supports refugees. Very interesting. See, the political dynamics in different countries are different, right? I'll never forget being in Turkey and the left wing guy that, a lot of people like my wife wanted to win. That guy had a poster basically saying, kick the Syrians out. Those are literally what it said. Like, that's something you couldn't imagine, like even Trump doing. Trump just has a big old poster where Trump says, kick the Mexicans out. That's it. That's it on the poster. And it's an official poster from Trump. Like the left wing guy had a poster like that. Like, think about that. Like in America, that'd be wild. Some people might be happy that Biden might say something like that, right? But that would be totally different from our political dynamic, right? But still very interesting that, the divide in Turkey is very different than it is in America. And it makes me think about, why countries sometimes, why we don't have a unified global left, right? Because I think our left in America, thinks that the government is too big, but the left in America doesn't use those sort of talking points. The left in America doesn't say, we don't want big government, because we do want government in some places. Right? We want a social safety net. We want social security. We want universal basic income. We want universal health care. We want universal higher education for everybody. And yes, America does have the money to do it. For anybody out here who says we don't got the money to do it, right? We've been had the money to do it, and we have the money to do it, even if we give another $2 billion to Ukraine and Israel, right? We just don't say stupid stuff like, get the government out of our business. Also, I want the government to ban abortion. Like stuff like that. That's what our American right says. The American right says we don't want big government, but we want the government to tell us what to do with our bodies, whether we can have babies or not. We want the government to tell us what books we can read. We want the government to tell us how to pray in schools and stuff like that. Like, that's what our right wants. Meanwhile, in Turkey, it seems like your right sort of wants the same thing as our rights, but your left has picked up the talking points of our American right, if that makes sense. So Avery Adams says Trump should have a poster like that. If Trump had a poster that said kick the Mexicans out, somebody's gonna put up a poster that says kick Melania's bitch ass out. Melania came on an illegal visa. Melania overstayed her visa. Trump married an illegal immigrant. It's so crazy. The Trump supporters, like, they're wild in the head, man. They got a whole man up in the office who had illegals working at his casinos, married an illegal immigrant, and raped a woman. Let's not forget, Trump is a rapist, guys. Trump is a certified rapist. Y'all want to talk about Diddy? Let's talk about Diddy. We saw Diddy on videotape, but Diddy is still innocent in the court of law. We don't know what's going to happen this year or next year, or whether Diddy's going to do the dash, if Diddy's going to do the take K, if he's going to flee the country like Russell Simmons. But Diddy ain't been in the court of law and had a conviction against him saying that he raped a woman. Meanwhile, Trump has a conviction of a rapist. Y'all want to talk about Drake is a big dick deviant? Meanwhile, Trump is a literal definition of a big dick deviant. Anyway. Acti said, we want government too, but only for regulating the country, but our government only protects itself. The government only protects itself. I don't know what you mean by that, Acti. What do you mean the government only protects itself? Do you mean like the government is only protecting like AKP, like the ruling party, the ruling right-wing party? Is that what you mean? Avery said, Trump is racist. Biden likes kids. Trump is a rapist. Biden likes kids. Drake and Biden are the same. They want to get richer. Okay, so they want to get richer and stay in power forever. Okay, that's what you mean. That's what you mean. Interesting, interesting. All right, Drake and Biden are the same. Okay, all right. There's only been accusations, man. Listen, man, I'm not going to stick up for Drake or Biden because they are both, kind of sour individuals. But, one guy is a convicted. I would not let Trump be around acting by himself. You get what I'm saying? What type of man would want Trump hanging out with his girl by himself when the man literally was on tape talking about, I grabbed this married woman, this woman. No, I tried to sleep with this married man's wife, and I thought I could do it because I'm a star. And when I'm a star, I can sleep with anybody because women throw themselves at me, and I can even grab them by the pussy. Like, that's literally what Trump said, bro. Anyways, oh man. Who hasn't talked about that like their boys? Avery, did you hang out with your boys and say you want to fuck their wives? Because that's what Trump was. That's what people miss. Trump was talking about, I was trying to sleep with this married man's wife. Fuck the talking about grabbing him by the pussy part. In the Access Hollywood tape, Trump was talking about, yo, I tried to sleep with her. I pushed up on her. I pushed up on a married man's wife. I've never spoken like that. Locker room talk? Okay. Acti said, I don't want to be with Trump even if there was 1,000 people with us. That'd be hilarious. That's hilarious, man. Y'all crazy. Y'all crazy, man. Y'all crazy. Anyway. Continuing here. Cloak sites are not exclusive to the United States. In a site called Youth for Volpe, Canadian politician Joe Volpe's alleged corruption is the target of this cloaked site, intended as satire. In 2006, Volpe was a liberal member of parliament who was also campaigning for a leadership position. The cloaked site, which features images of children who are supposedly pledging donations to Volpe, appeared sans authorship after news reports about illegal campaign donations surfaced. Volpe later said he would return 5 contributions made to his campaign after it was revealed that 11-year-old twins had each donated more than $10,000 and a 14-year-old had given another $5,400. But by this time, the site was already up. Volpe, like Bush and global corporate giant Walmart, was not amused, and unlike the other two, Volpe could use Canadian laws and his political power to have the site shut down. An additional site has been launched that has not been able to be removed. Okay. Whether or not cloak sites can actually sway an election or influence consumers remains an open question. Still, these 3 examples suggest that powerful politicians and corporations clearly see both danger and opportunity in cloak sites. Politicians worry that their lack of control over cloak sites, not of their own creation, could mean a rupture in a highly crafted public persona and influence constituents to vote against them. Public relations firms try to use cloak sites to shape public perceptions of their client corporations in order to influence consumers. In both instances, what is at stake with cloak sites is managing a public identity. At risk is the potential loss of votes, money, and power. Cloaked websites can also conceal a hidden political connection. Cloaked websites can also conceal a hidden political agenda connected to reproductive politics, such as Teen Breaks, teenbreaks.com. Craig Mack jumped into the comments, but then he deleted his comment. Don't know exactly what he said, but yeah, man, y'all just got to leave your comments up. I'm trying to read everything. Anyway, this site is very sophisticated in its use of domain name, graphic user interface, professional looking design layout, and moderate sounding rhetoric. To all but the most astute political observer and experienced internet veteran, the site appears to be a legitimate source of reproductive health information. In fact, it is a disguise for pro-life propaganda. Nowhere on the site does it reveal the political affiliation of the publisher, nor even who the publisher is beyond a vague mention of the Rosetta Foundation, which is a front for a pro-life activist. On a page called Complications for Girls, the site quotes literature from the conservative group Focus on the Family to support the notion that there are many and exclusively negative physical and emotional consequences from abortion, part of a post-abortion syndrome, quote unquote. This supposed syndrome is not a medically recognized condition, but rather a rhetorical strategy of the pro-life movement to advance its agenda. This cloaked website is in many ways a digital version of the brick and mortar women's health clinics advertised in the phone book alongside legitimate clinics, intentionally concealing the fact that all the counselors and information are designed to prevent women from accessing abortion services. The danger in a cloak site of this type, as with brick and mortar locations, is that young girls or women looking for reliable reproductive health information might be persuaded that post-abortion syndrome is a reality, and in the worst case scenario, that they would endure an unwanted pregnancy and childbirth rather than end a pregnancy for fear of the fictitious syndrome and lack of access to services. The tautological strategy here of using conservative sources to substantiate conservative quote unquote facts is a commonplace tactic of the right wing propaganda machine in the United States. Indeed, a cottage industry of conservative think tanks and pundits churning out scientific distortions has created what one writer calls a war on the Enlightenment ideal of rationality. Whatever one's personal politics might be of concerning the right to abortion, the fact that this site presents itself as neutral and conceals its authorship and political agenda qualifies it as a cloaked site. I'll never forget when I got my first girlfriend pregnant. Name was Darlene. She was 15. I was 16 or something like that. Or we were around the same age. I don't know. I was either 15 or 16. I forgot exactly. Monroe, Louisiana. She was from West Monroe, Louisiana. She got pregnant. We found out. I tried to go to a clinic with her, a clinic in Monroe, Louisiana, and it titled itself like Planned Parenthood. Like the name wasn't Planned Parenthood, but the name was very similar to like Planning for Parenthood or Planning for Motherhood or something like that. That was the name of the clinic I went to with my then pregnant like 15-year-old girlfriend, right? And I sat down in the place with her, and I'll never forget, like, I was talking to the counselor lady. It was like this older white woman and like an older white man sitting there, and we were like, we're young, we really don't think we want to have a baby. We didn't tell our parents yet, what do we want to do? And they said, well, we have some great services for you. We have counseling, we have adoption services, we have things that could help you pay for like prenatal care and stuff like that. I'll never forget that, when my girlfriend got pregnant. And I was like, okay, that's interesting, but both of us have spoken about this, and we just kind of want to have an abortion. Like, we are not ready to do this. Our relationship is strained. And they both looked at each other, the white man and the older white woman, and they said, we don't do that here. We only promote, we are a pro-life organization, right? Now, uh, that didn't shock me growing up in Bible thumping Monroe, Louisiana, right? And eventually we did have to man up and woman up and tell our parents. And I got a big ass whooping for getting my girlfriend pregnant at 16. But eventually we were able to scrounge up the $350, and we were able to find somebody that would drive us all the way to Shreveport, Louisiana, because in Washita Parish there is not an abortion clinic, and I doubt even the abortion clinic that was open in Shreveport is still there, right? Because since Trump got 3 Supreme Court judges to overturn Roe v. Wade, I believe Louisiana has rolled back abortion law to, like, you can only have an abortion on Friday, the day after you find out you're pregnant, at 3 p.m. When the doctor is there from 1 to 2:30 or something like that, right? Like, that's what it's like now in Louisiana to get an abortion. So I'm very lucky to some degree, because imagine how different my life would be had I been a statistic, another black man who had a baby at like 15 or 16, right? That could have been me. And a lot of my friends that happened to. You get what I'm saying? So very interesting that, this sort of like cloakedness that she's talking about with the websites. My old ass remembers, but it was more with the clinic. I'll never forget that shit, man. Never forget that. Wonder what Darlene's doing now. She don't talk to my ass. None of my exes talk to me. I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know why. I'm a nice guy. I'm a nice guy. I might be a bit crazy. I might go a bit overboard with it. But I love hard. I love hard. You get what I'm saying? But either way, shout out to Darlene, wherever she's at. Sorry for all the pain I caused you if you're listening to this live stream. And shout out to every woman out there who's ever had an abortion. Yeah, it's not easy to make that decision. And hell, I've probably been the reason a lot of abortions have happened across the planet. But That's nothing to be proud of. That's nothing to be proud of. Abortion is not birth control. Let's repeat. Abortion is not birth control. We should not just put nut in everything and expect her to just suck it out and vacuum it later. That's sick. That's wild. That's nasty. You get what I'm saying? Avery Adams says, Simon, you don't got your exes on payroll? No. I don't even got my wife on payroll, nigga. I ain't got nobody on payroll. Anyway, so let's see. That laugh was evil. LOL, said Acty. Greg Man says, what up, Simon? I'll catch you next live. Hopefully you do my request topic. Chilling in TVOTs. Where the hell is TVOTs? Who can I bit my tongue. I just bit my tongue. Where the hell is TVOT? I'm pretty good at geography. TVOT sounds like it's in Israel. TVOT? The hell is TVOT? Anyway, yeah. Anyway, cloaked websites trying to convince teens to get pregnant. Like the Republicans and the conservatives and Christian nationalists in America who are so obsessed with abortion and getting rid of abortions. A lot of them, I believe, like really like kids to some degree, right? Because you know for a fact if abortion is illegal in Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Texas, Arkansas, Tennessee, right? You're literally talking about kids fucking over their lives after fucking each other, right? Like that's the wild thing. All right. Dennis said TVOT is in Montenegro. Okay. All right. But either way, wild Christians want other teens to have sex in America and get pregnant. Like, what type of sick person is that, man? What type of sick person knows for a fact there will be teenage pregnancy? Because this is the thing, right? The crazy Christian conservatives in America, they want to ban abortion, but they want to leave strip clubs alone. They want to allow sex stores to stay open. They want the hub to be on. They still want to allow men to be able to get Viagra and stuff like that. Like they're cool with all that, right? But getting an abortion, oh hell no. But we can allow all the licentiousness of America to continue. I don't know. Greg Mack says Montenegro. Well, enjoy Montenegro. I really hope I get the chance to visit Montenegro, right? I want to get back on my travel ish, but I'm broke. I'm broke. I'm broke, motherfucker. I'm broke. I'm broke as hell, bro. I'm paying for college. I'm paying for college. Yo, I'm paying for college. I'm paying for rent. I'm paying for groceries. I'm paying for clothes. And I'm also paying for school. I feel like a single mother outside. I feel like I'm a single father outside. You feel me? I feel like, dog, I got too much responsibility. I'm a grown ass man, though, and I can take it because I'm big top. You feel me? I'm big top. You feel me? But I can do it. But goddamn, it's hard. Goddamn, it's hard. God damn, it's hard. I feel like a single father outside, taking care of my wife, taking care of the rent, taking care of the utilities, all this on my black ass shoulders while I live in the whitest part of Europe you could imagine. Think about my life is crazy, man. My life is crazy. Avery Adams says, we can agree to disagree. I believe in self-accountability for serious reason. There should be abortions, but for making mistakes for teens or young adults who continue to make mistakes, I'm against. People should get one abortion free card. That's what as soon as you're born, you get that abortion card. Congratulations, Mr. and Mr. Smith. Here's your newborn baby. Oh, sorry. Here's your social security card. One abortion card, one credit card, because they live in America and they won't be able to pay for shit. One get out of jail free card for doing marijuana, because the rest of the states have made it illegal. You know what I'm saying? Like in America, you should be able. I agree with you, Avery. Everybody should get one card each for the thing that America does all the time. Here's one surviving a mass shooting card. Uh, here's one school shooting card. And just to make it a better deal for you, here's one N pass. Here's one N word card. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I hope you have a good life. Take care of that boy. You know, every doctor should do that. All right. Anyway, continuing here. Avery Adams says all porn and strip clubs should be shut down. Avery said, me and you both know people who abuse the abortion availability. I don't get it. We have Plan B. But Plan B is recent. Plan B is recent. If my generation had Plan B, when the Yin Yang twins made skeet, 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 it'd be a different story. It'd be skeet, 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 beat, beat, Plan B everywhere. You get what I'm saying? To the window, to the wall, to the Plan B is out of my drawers. You get what I'm saying? Like, it will be different. Plan B came up when I was like Plan B came out when I was like 24, 25, right? Because I was knocking them down, and they started popping Plan Bs out of nowhere. You get what I'm saying? So I don't know. I don't know. I used to have Plan B by the dozens, but doesn't that seem even more wild? Because this is the thing, right? The Christian conservatives feel like nobody should have sex until they get married. That's what the Christian conservatives say, and the purpose of sex is to reproduce. And technically, in the Bible, it says if you pull out your dick when you about to bust that nut, that's committing a sin. Technically, in the Bible and in the Quran, they say if you pull out and you don't nut inside of her, you're committing a sin. You feel me? So I don't get it. I don't get it. If you're going to stand on this moral principle that abortion shouldn't be legal, shouldn't it also be illegal to pull your dick out when you're about to bust one? You get what I'm saying? I'm just making that clear. I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to understand. Even if I was worried, I would never risk it. That's when I was younger. I learned that I won't have anyone take Plan B now. All right. I won't have sex with anyone who I'm not ready to have a kid with. Okay. Well, that's good. That's good. I'm just saying. Sometimes it happens, though. Sometimes it happens. You out, you meet a nice cutie with a booty, and you want to do your duty. You feel me? So you're gonna lay something. You're gonna lay something. You might say, "Oh, I don't want to have sex with nobody who I don't want to have kids with." But what if something just fall in your lap? Oh shit, bad bitch want to fuck on me. Okay. All right. So then what happens then? What happens then? You chilling by yourself, You just outside minding your business. Oh shit, bad bitch want to fuck on me. What you gonna do? Turn that down? Unless you're married, you can't. You get what I'm saying? So I mean, this is a tricky topic. That's what I said. I get one get out of jail free card. I use it wisely. All right, so the bad bitch laying in your lap. Then you're gonna use like one get out of jail free card. We got to make it law. We got to make it law first. The law has to dictate that everybody gets those cards when we're born. Oh shit! Acty said a baddie's landing on your lap. I already got a baddie that landed on my lap, Acty, and it's you. It's you. It's you. Mwah. See how easy that is? I'm just playing. Anyway, continuing here. So, deception is not a new rhetorical strategy, but some features of the digital era make it more difficult to discern which sites are legitimate and which sites disguise a hidden political agenda. Of course, designating a site as legitimate or cloaked is at some level a political distinction, similar to calling some organizations front groups and others legitimate social movement activism. Shying away from such political distinctions in evaluating information online only serves to obfuscate the key issues. Rather, I contend that the kind of critical consciousness that enables one to make these kinds of judgments possible is urgently needed, particularly when it comes to the racist propaganda of cloaked white supremacist websites. The cloaked white supremacist websites I explore in the rest of this chapter conceal political agendas intended to subvert civil rights and affirm white supremacy through an audacious deployment of the rhetoric of the civil rights movement. Indeed, a number of these sites deliberately seek to disguise the racist motives of the website's author by using carefully chosen domain names, deceptive graphic user interfaces, GUIs, and language that is not only less strident than what appears in overt hate speech online, but also mimic the language of civil rights. So, continuing here. Cloaked white supremacist websites. Frank Weltner, mentioned in the opening of this chapter, is perhaps most widely known for his overtly anti-Semitic website JewWatch.com. Somebody check if JewWatch.com is still up. That's a wild website title. JewWatch.com. Jesus Christ. Weltner also maintains a cloaked site called American Civil Rights Review, ACRR. The main page of this site features blue and red text on a bright yellow background, an audio file upon loading, and inexplicable animated GIFs throughout. Across the top of the main page is an image map. That is a series of images that links to other pages within the website. The featured images from left to right include a black and white digital photo of Malcolm X linked to an interior page called Civil Rights Positions, a digital reproduction of a Currier and Ives painting of a plantation with a link to a page titled Cotton Plantation by the Mississippi River, High Self-Esteem for Many Slaves, a black and white digital photo of Che Guevara with a link to diversity and multiculturalism journalism in international areas, and a graphic of a sign with stenciled letters that reads St. Louis, no trespassing, no loitering, with a link to a page called St. Louis Homepage, with further links to pages about the devastation wrought by urban renewal at the hands of housing and urban development. The blue highlighted text above the image map reads American Civil Rights Review, and the smaller red text beneath says Speaking Out for the new civil rights movement. Below that is another heading in red, Civil Rights, Human Rights Super News Search, which invites visitors to access daily happenings in major news sources. These all link to an external site, the search engine Yahoo, by the category noted in the link text. Only this is visible for most web browsers without scrolling further down the page. If the web user does scroll down, and usability research indicates that only about 10% of users scroll all the way down to the bottom of a page. The page does not continue below this, where there is more linked text in blue. This headlined with Civil Rights, Human Rights web resources on ACRR, which links to internal pages. Further down are still more animated GIFs, a number of badges or emblems made on a Mac, and at the very bottom, red all caps text that reads Copyright Notice, with a link to an external page hosted at Cornell University Law School with language about the fair use provision within U.S. copyright law. There is no identification anywhere on the page, even scrolling all the way down, of the author or publisher of or the intended message of the site beyond speaking out for the new civil rights movement, quote unquote. And indeed, determining authorship of this site is impossible without going to an external source. Going into the comments, Acti says, I think they took it down, but there is a wiki page for it. Very interesting. So JewWatch.com doesn't exist anymore, thank God. But one of the interesting things that I find fascinating is how the white supremacists are talking about, Israel versus Hamas, right? Because there are some white supremacists who are like, go Hamas, because Hamas is basically, saying that they want to kill Jewish people. Meanwhile, the other white supremacists are like, we don't like the Jews, but they need to have a state. So let the Israelis have their state, because if Hamas or the Arabs take over Israel, then where are the Jews going to go? They're going to come back to Germany, back to Poland, back to Hungary, and stuff like that. And that's the last thing the white supremacists want. And the unspoken thing about the Jews since, the creation of the state of Israel is that the Jews have gotten a lot more brown. Let's keep it absolutely a buck. I know we have a popular image in our mind of like Seth Rogen and like Jerry Seinfeld as like the image of Jewishness, but a lot of Jews are, they look like Abdul and Kamal rather than Jerry and Seth, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's another thing. Like a lot of the white supremacists, of course, they don't view most Jews as white or any Jew as white, but some of the white supremacists are thinking like, okay, the war in Gaza, of course, it's good that Hamas is killing Jews. And by the way, this is not what I believe. I'm only saying what the white supremacists are talking about on 4chan, on Twitter, and stuff like that. But then other white supremacists are like saying like, they need to have their state and stuff like that. Very interesting. Very interesting how even among the people who view themselves as the best, the smartest, the most bright, they cannot even come to a basic consensus that, hey, maybe genocide is wrong. Hey, maybe genociding any group of people is wrong. They can't even come to that consensus, right? Because it's so crazy that the white supremacists say that they're the best, the brightest, the smartest, but they lack total morals, total ethics, anything like that. They view other people as disposable, that they can be erased from the planet. Does that sound like morally right? Does that sound like supreme? Does that sound like the type of people who should lead the world? Does that sound like they come from a lineage of people with good morals, good hearts? No, it sounds like they come from a lineage of evil. Sounds like they come from a lineage of wicked devils. That's what it sounds like to me. That's what it sounds like to me. But hey, I'm just some guy. I'm just some guy who likes to read. Anyway, continuing here. It would be a mistake to dismiss the harmful potential of the cloaked ACRR based on its crude graphic design. While it is true that the unappealing text and background colors, use of animated GIFs, screaming all cap headlines, and default font settings give this site away as a first generation or last century website, the racism and anti Semitism on the cloaked sites are fairly nuanced in some unexpected ways. On the interior page, linked through the Currier and Ives painting, Weltner describes describes the high self-esteem of many slaves, quote unquote, and goes on to make an argument for slavery as an idyllic social system in which plantations were sanitary, happy, and humane places rather than sites of a cruel, dehumanizing system of brutal torture and forced labor that they were. Okay, Weltner, if slavery is a good thing, let's have black people own white slaves. How about that? Weltner, would you like that? Would you like that? Do you think white people would have more high self-esteem? Because right now in America, the number one people who are killing themselves, putting that gun to their head, overdosing on drugs like Mac Miller, are white men. How about this? Let's have all the black men in America enslave all the white men in America to increase their high self-esteem. Let's have them work on plantations. Let's have them clean our houses, clean our cars. Let's enslave white people. How about that, Weltner? Since you say slavery is a good thing, since slavery increases the self-esteem of people and it's an idyllic social system, let's do this. Let's enslave white people. Only black people can enslave white people for a good generation. And let's see if that increases the self-esteem. Let's see if we can make sure these young white boys stop killing themselves or stop walking up in schools and slaughtering 7 babies in 8th grade. Say, slavery wasn't that bad. The Africans really had the slaves, and the white folks were just trying to free them by putting them on boats and chains and whipping them. Stupid shit. These literal comments I've read. I open up my comment section and see the stupidest things the white supremacists say every day. So how about this? We'll enslave white people for one good generation. We'll give them a good old treatment, that good old Southern treatment, and we'll increase the self-esteem since it's an idyllic social system. And we'll be humane. We'll be the most humane slave owners that there ever existed. When white men are enslaved by black people. How about that? How about that? Let's do that. Let's make a deal. All you stupid white supremacists who say that slavery wasn't so bad. All right? Anyway, I'm going to continue here. So Weltner further erodes the historical reality of the racialized system of slavery by arguing that Europeans were equally mistreated by bad working conditions as enslaved Africans and African Americans were by chattel slavery. Weltner's argument defending slavery as a humane system is not particularly new and harkens back to centuries-old versions of white supremacy, such as that found in Thomas Jefferson's Notes on the State of Virginia. I gotta say this, for any of the stupid white people, once again, stupid white supremacists and also stupid white people, unfortunately. Not saying that, not trying to pick on white people, but the system of white supremacy is incumbent upon certain white people and other groups of people just basically being stupid and being ignorant and repeating certain talking points. A lot of stupid white people say the Irish had it just as bad. I'm Scottish. They treated me like a nigga. When the Polish were around, they called them the darkies of Europe. All the stupid stuff the white supremacists say. They say that, white people had it just as bad in America because they were Italian or Greek or whatever. I want to ask any of them, show me where the Italian breeding farms were. Show me where the Irish breeding farms were. Show me where they would put a paper bag over a young boy's head and tell him to go fuck whatever is in that barn until it gets pregnant. Show me where. Show me where. Show me where they had the Irish breeding farms. Show me where they had that. Show me where they did the Derby's dose to Irishmen or to the Greeks or to the Italians. And if you don't know what Derby's dose is when they would force a slave to eat his own shit and cover his mouth until he swallowed it. And then do it again until that nigga stopped misbehaving. When? Show me when. Show me when. Show me where. And I will delete my entire channel. I will stop talking. I will stop live streaming. I'll delete every video and everything I've ever put up. If you can show me where the Irish breeding farms were, where the Greek breeding farms were, where Derby's dose happened to the Wops and Dagos who popped up on the shores of America. Show me where. Show me where. And also show me the contract where black men owned white slaves and were beating them up and raping their wives. Show me where. Show me where that happened, and I will stop fucking talking forever. Anyway, continuing here. The nuance here exists in the combination of the use of digital media and the evidence Weltner selects to make this argument. Weltner draws on oral histories of former slaves recorded by the WPA workers in the 1930s and provided links to audio files and transcribed text. The Library of Congress has championed the collection and archiving of oral histories, and oral histories have been used by educators to engage students about slavery, abolition, and the civil rights rights struggle, as on another Library of Congress project website, Voices of Civil Rights, quote unquote, which features oral histories of the civil rights movement. However, in Weltner's hand, the oral histories take on different meaning. On his cloak site, he selectively compiles excerpts on a page titled Forgotten Black Voices, quote unquote, such as the quotation from Adeline 91. I want to be in heaven with all my white folks just to wait on them and love them and serve them, sort of like I did in slavery time. Here he uses the oral history data to support his revisionist claim that slavery was a quote unquote humane institution in which enslaved people were not mistreated. This is a remarkable use of digital media to undermine the cultural value of racial equality. With the repurposing, Weltner takes an oral history project created by the Library of Congress intended to valorize the African American experience of surviving the horrors of slavery, a legitimate and laudable project by most standards, and twist that same source material to call into question that very experience and the struggle to overcome it. Weltner uses the oral history data from the Library of Congress and reinterprets them through a white racial frame to suggest that chattel slavery was, after all, a humane system and thereby diminishes both the harm done to African Americans in this system and white Americans' culpability for that system. By using language such as quote unquote forgotten black voices, Weltner draws on the language of multiculturalism. This rhetorical choice further complicates Weltner's attempt at revising the history of slavery because it offers the patina of credibility by suggesting black authorship and thus authenticity. This language also serves to further disguise Weltner's political intentions and avoid waving any red flags that overt white supremacist rhetoric might raise. However, Weltner's attempt at retelling the history of slavery falls short of being thoroughly successful. There are a number of feature characteristics of digital media that make Weltner's strategy both potentially very effective and a failed attempt. Weltner's appropriation of civil rights discourse on the internet is potentially much more effective than if it were published in a printed newsletter of the pre-internet era. While there were and still are vanity presses that publish books and newsletters without review, the cost and distribution function as built-in constraints. In addition, recognizing some forms of racist propaganda in printed media is easier in part because they are distributed outside conventional channels. The fact that Weltner deploys language that mimics civil rights using digital media and does so on a cloaked website that conceals his authorship and political agenda means that without the gatekeeping of editors, publishers, and broadcasters, Weltner's rhetoric takes on a veneer of legitimacy. Furthermore, Weltner's appropriation of oral history source material from another online source, the Library of Congress, further blurs the line between legitimate and revisionist history. The link to the Library of Congress connects Weltner to a credible source. Then his interpretation of the data from that source reinterprets and subverts long established historical facts. Finally, the internet has a kind of leveling effect that renders one source as valid as another because they are both accessible via the same media. The same connection and browser window that delivers the Library of Congress or the New York Times also offers up Weltner's cloaked site. This leveling effect makes other evidence such as visual cues like graphic design and page layout even more important for assessing the credibility of websites. This is where Weltner's site fails dramatically. His crude page design and layout renders all the text-based content at the site suspect. But this particular kind of failure is an easy one to fix by either a person with a good graphics design skills or by downloading a generic website template and customizing it to include white supremacist political content. This also means that Weltner is one good graphic designer away from a much more pernicious web presence. Basically, they're saying here that, this guy actually has a good idea incorporating this sort of like woke terminology, this neoliberal, social justice sort of languages and phrasing, forgotten black voices to amplify, coon talking points. You get what I'm saying? So yeah, once again, this book is written in 2009, and I believe the strategy has changed. The internet and media in general has become a place where talking heads and influencers and people who are seen with some veneer of respectability or who are just able to capture eyes and attention are used as mouthpieces for certain ideas. Candace Owens, Thomas Sowell. What's the guy's name? Jason Whitlock, and who's that other Nigerian COON? who's talking. Man, I forgot his name. Sports commentator guy. But you know what I'm talking about. Like now, instead of like this idea of having picking out quotes from certain black people in the past or cherry picking certain information about black people in the past to fit a narrative that slavery is good, the civil rights movement was bad, and all that sort of stuff. Now they just get black folks to say it. You can pay a Candace Owens to say it. You can pay a Sage Steele to say it. You can pay Jason Whitlock to say all this stuff. You don't have to even make the websites now. But what the book is saying here is that with more investment into this sort of website, it could actually gain more traction, which is very dangerous, right? Continuing here. Don Black, the white supremacist who maintains Stormfront.org, discussed in previous chapters, also publishes a number of cloak sites, including one called Bamboo Delight, bamboo-delight.com. The Bamboo Delight Company website purports to offer visitors acupuncture lessons, kung fu, alternative medicine, weight loss secrets, and guidance in Chinese wealth secrets. The headline on the top of the page tells visitors that by combining Aryan knowledge with Chinese medicinal exercise and unidentified, we have been able to develop healing and exercise methods superior to all others. The word Aryan is the only clue on the portion of the page that this is a white supremacist site. The author or publisher of the site is not disclosed. Oh, God. Aryan and Chinese medicine. Don't the white supremacists view Chinese as subhumans? Why would you pick up anything from the Chinese if they are viewed as less than white people? That's what I'm trying to understand. Their ideology makes no sense. It literally makes no sense. Ah, continuing here. As with the previous cloak site, the graphics and page layouts are all amateurish. The anti-Semitism of the site's author is evident as one scrolls down the page. At the bottom of the page, the text situated between animated flashing, multicolored horizontal bars suggests that quote-unquote diseases are never cured but only treated because Jewish physicians are religiously prohibited from treating non-Jews. What? So the Jews are the only smart doctors who can cure diseases? It makes no sense. They make no sense. This cloaked site supposedly offers information about alternative medicine and conceals its anti Semitism by disguising the authorship, placing the overtly anti Semitic text at the bottom of a long page, and distracting the user with the unexpected reference to quote unquote Chinese medicine, not typically associated with white supremacy. Don Black also hosts a site called Martin Luther King, a true historical examination, which is in many ways the archetypal cloak site. Blacks registered the URL martinlutherking.org in 1998 and has maintained this cloak site continuously since then. That is shameful. That is absolutely shameful. Once again, guys, think about this. Think about a wild Zionist buying the domain YasserArafat.org. And then on his website, all he talks about is how Yasser Arafat was a pedophile terrorist who basically wanted to kill all Jews and send his people to hellfire, fighting for a cause that was unjust and not right. Think about that. Think about if there was a Jewish person doing that. Meanwhile, the white supremacists are doing this to our icons and heroes online, spreading misinformation and propaganda out there. And even though these websites are not popular, they're popular enough that a lot of the talking points that the white supremacists say on Twitter, 4chan, YouTube, Facebook, all over the internet come from these places. Come from these places. It filters upwards. It filters upwards, right? It's like, think about this, right? Think about how, I got receipts. Where did I got receipts come from? Does anybody know? Nobody's listening to the chat because y'all are probably more concerned with Cassie's BBL or Kanye's, bad breath or what Amber Rose said about Trump. Y'all are more concerned with that. But does anybody know where I got receipts come from? What about throwing shade? Anybody know? It came from the trans community. Came from the black queer trans community. Filtered upwards. The black queer trans community is very small. It's like 100 people at most. And the people who are the innovators in it are like 5. Meanwhile, it filters upwards. Terms like Black Lives Matter, I got receipts, we're throwing shade, I'm going to read you, all that sort of stuff comes from the black, trans, queer, gay community. But it filters upwards into dominant society. Think about this, the word bro, the white supremacist's favorite word, bro. Where did bro come from? Bro came from broski or brody. which is a term used by black GIs in Vietnam. Like five niggas. Five niggas came up with the term Brody. Or how about the fist bump? Bumping fists. Like this. You see another man, you bump his fist. That started from black GIs in Vietnam. Filtered upwards into society, and now the white supremacists do a fist bump whenever they kill a black person and then call each other bro. And shit like that. You get what I'm saying? It always filters upwards. That's why this is important. And I hope people are listening and understanding why this is important. The reason we're reading this, the reason we're talking about these websites that might be dead, that might have like 5 hits a month, is that important enough people are picking up the information from these sites and then filtering it upwards into the rest of our internet culture. I'm telling y'all. But y'all don't hear me though. Let's talk about Cassie's BBL next time. Okay. All right. Continuing here. At first glance, the website appears to be a tribute site to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., albeit one intended for a younger audience, as indicated by the link at the top. Quote unquote, attention, students, try out our MLK pop quiz. And the one further down the page indicating that there are quote unquote rap lyrics. There are a number of clues that something is amiss. The first is the description of the website as a true historical examination. The use of the word true here suggests an uncovering of some formerly untold truth about Dr. King, and the inclusion of this version of the truth is an additional clue about the intention of the site's author. The main page features an unflattering quote of clandestine FBI audio tapes recorded while King was engaged in sexual activity with a woman other than his wife. The fact that the quotation is taken from actual recordings and was originally published in Newsweek, and this source is noted on the website, works in a similar fashion to Weltner's use of oral history material from the Library of Congress. It is possible to read the transcript of King's conversations taped by the FBI within the larger context of systemic white supremacy, in which nascent civil rights movements are routinely stamped out by the government. Within the context of this cloaked site, the quotation is intended to undermine King's legitimacy as a civil rights leader, and with that, the racial equality that he stood for. Once on the website, there are a number of additional indications as to the source of the information, including a link in the right margin that reads Jews and Civil Rights, thus hinting at its anti-Semitic agenda. Clicking on the link leads to a page that more than suggests anti-Semitism, as it includes a chapter called Jews, Communism, and Civil Rights from white supremacist David Duke's book, My Awakening. For the astute web user, this is a giveaway about the ideological orientation of the website's author. Still, for many younger, less experienced web users or those unfamiliar with recent U.S. racial political history, the name David Duke may have no resonance. Going back to the first page, there is one more clue if a casual web user wanted to know the origin of this true historical examination. Scrolling down to the very bottom of the first page, there is a link that reads, hosted by Stormfront, quote unquote, and clicking on that link takes the users to Don Black's White Pride Worldwide, quote unquote, at stormfront.org. Although these clues might seem fairly obvious to some relatively savvy web users, other users can easily miss them. What makes this cloak site archetypal is only partially about what is on the site itself. Just as significant is the domain name and the place the site appears in search engine results. Using a standard search engine and the search terms Martin Luther King, this website regularly appears third or fourth in the results returned by Google. Think about that. That's crazy. This was written in 2009. Google had been around at least at that point by a decade or so. And by 2009, the time I graduated high school, the third site that would pop up when you type Martin Luther King was a racist, white supremacist website. Now, on one hand, some blame has to be had to the King family for not registering the domain name, protecting their father's legacy, and stuff like that, right? Something has to be said about that to some degree. But on the other hand, Google should have stepped in and said, wait. When people are searching for one of the most important, most famous historical figures of the 20th century, they're led directly to a website that is giving misinformation. They're led directly, pretty much like think about millions of people that typed in Martin Luther King on Google in America. And the third site that you would see when you open Google's first page was a racist website that eventually led to Stormfront. Think about that. Think about that. Is that not white supremacy? Is that not white supremacy? If this was ISIS.com, Al Qaeda.com, we love bin Laden.com, and it was the third result when you type in bin Laden or Osama on Google, do you think it would have been up there for much longer? No. No, 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 no. Anyway, continuing here. Oh, man. Using a standard search engine and the search terms Martin Luther King, the website regularly appears third or fourth in the results returned by Google. Before even viewing the content of the site, the URL makes it appear to be legitimate, in part because the main web reference is made up of only the domain name Martin Luther King, and the URL ends with the suffix .org. The decision to register the domain name martinlutherking.org relatively early in the evolution of the web was a shrewd move for advocates of white supremacy, and similarly a lost opportunity for advocates of civil rights. Recognizing that domain name registration is now a political battleground, a number of civil rights organizations have begun to reserve domain names to prevent them from being used by opponents of racial justice. For example, the NAACP registered 6 domain names that include the N word, right? NIGGER. And the ADL registered a similar number of domain names with the word KIKE. However, registering offensive epithets is only a small part of the struggle. The move by opponents to register the esteemed symbols of civil rights as domain names, such as Martin Luther King, and use them to undermine racial justice, is one that was clearly unanticipated by civil rights organizations. For anybody who's listening, for like the 1 or 2 people who are listening to me, I want somebody to look up malcolmx.com, and let's make sure malcolmx.com is not some blacked porn site or something like that, or it's not some racist propaganda online. Somebody look up malcolmx.com, right? And let me know what you find. Continuing here. However, registering offensive epithets is only a small part of the struggle. The move by opponents to register the esteemed symbols of civil rights as domain names, such as Martin Luther King, and use them to undermine racial justice, is one that was clearly unanticipated by civil rights organizations. To be effective, quote sites with domain names such as martinlutherking.org or americancivilrightsreview.org rely on the naivete of their target audience, a predominantly white audience that each year moves further away from the experience of the civil rights era. The presence of cloaked sites raises important questions about white supremacy in the digital era. One of these questions has to do with whether someone could stumble upon virulent anti Semitism or racism online. It is not only possible, but likely that casual or novice web users could inadvertently come across white supremacist rhetoric while looking for legitimate civil rights information. The cloaked Martin Luther King site is a case in point. Using the web monitoring service Alexa, I charted the traffic to this cloaked site and to the legitimate civil rights website, the King Center, published by the King Families Organization in Atlanta. And then I also charted them comparatively. The estimated traffic for both sites is in the tens of millions in terms of number of hits, and the traffic patterns for the 2 sites are strikingly similar. Not surprisingly, traffic to both sites peaks annually around the time of Martin Luther King Day, toward the end of January, and during Black History Month, February. There is also one noticeable difference in traffic between the 2 sites, evident when looking at the graphs side by side. Here, there is evidence of a spike in traffic to the King Center site, the legitimate site, on January 31st, 2005, the day Mrs. King died. Other than this one rather dramatic difference, the traffic patterns for the 2 sites are remarkably comparable. The patterns are so similar, in fact, that it suggests that web users who are looking for legitimate civil rights information may very well be ending up at the cloaked white supremacist site. All right. Acty jump into the comments. She said, from what I saw on Malcolm X website is real. All right. But click around a bit. It might end up pointing you to Stormfront. It might end up pointing you to racial realism. They might have a quote saying Malcolm X thought that black people were naturally dumber or something like that. Right. Like click around a bit, because the thing is martinlutherking.org looks official, looks real and stuff like that. But, let's see. Let's see. Continuing here. The online home of the Institute for Historical Review is a cloaked site that may be more nefarious for its skillful graphic user interface. Here, the GUI is much more polished than on any of the previous sites discussed. There are no audio files or animated GIFs as there were with Weltner's site, and none of the amateurish background colors or fonts as with Black's site. There are books and tapes available for sale on the left and right sides of the page, and down the center is a list of brief, paragraph long descriptions of various news stories, each accompanied by a hyperlink and a photo. Across the top of the main page is a row of links to other pages on the site. The rhetoric on the site appears quite moderate at first glance, and the mission is described as quote unquote dedicated to truth, quote unquote, truth and free speech. All right. The structure, graphic design, and language on this page look completely benign, of course. They are not. As critically aware readers will know, the Institute for Historical Review is an organization that seeks to deny the existence of the Holocaust, published by Mark Weber, based in Orange County, California. IHR touts itself as a source of scholarly information to which countless scholars, researchers, and journalists have turned for solid and reliable information, quote unquote. The website users who know who Mark Weber is or who are already aware of the mission and deceptive nature of the IHR will not be misled by the cloaked website. But for the uninitiated, it is very likely that the combination of professional graphic design and non-existent sounding rhetoric can be disarming and effectively deceptive. The historical revisionists of IHR adhere to a philosophy that their pursuit of solid and reliable information, quote unquote, is stigmatized knowledge, similar to the revisionist history of slavery, according to Weltner, and the untold truth about Dr. King, according to Don Black. When this commitment to uncovering, quote unquote, stigmatized knowledge coincides with anti Semitism, as it is so often does, pre cyber frauds such as the protocols of the Elders of Zion find a renewed life in the digital era. Thus, while historical revisionists, conspiracy theories, and white supremacy certainly existed in the print era, the internet offers a new terrain for those who seek and produce stigmatized knowledge, blurring the lines between history and propaganda. All right, Mad Villainy jumped in. He said, seems legit. All right, well, if y'all verify MalcolmX.com, that makes me happy, right? I would hate for MalcolmX.com to be an extension of Yeezy porn or something like that. That would be the worst. That would be the worst. But the thing is, it's crazy that a white supremacist site for Martin Luther King, a man infinitely more famous than than Malcolm X, got millions of hits for almost a decade online. Somebody check if martinlutherking.org is still up. Is martinlutherking.org still up? That'll be even worse. If martinlutherking.org is still up, I've lost all hope for humanity. Seriously. How could somebody let a white supremacist take the name of literally the most famous man of the 20th century and basically have racial realism on it? Insane. Insane. Anyway, racist propaganda in the digital era. The emergence of cloaked white supremacist websites illustrates a central feature of racist propaganda in the digital era: the use of the internet to spread difficult to detect lies that are intended to undermine racial equality. Cloaked white supremacist websites take issue with historical facts in sometimes oblique ways. By concealing authorship and intention, such sites combine old forms of black and gray propaganda with digital media. This combination of racist propaganda and digital media constitutes a new way of presenting, publishing, and debating ideas about race, racism, and racial equality. To better understand racist propaganda in the digital era, we can learn from critical theorists who wrote about propaganda in another era shaped by an earlier medium. In 1951, in a 1951 essay about American fascist propaganda, Theodore Adorno, writing about the persuasive tactics of a broadcast media, points to the similarities between mass culture and fascist ideology. In the epigraph that opens this chapter, Adorno critiques the manipulation inherent in both advertising and fascism when he writes that fascist propaganda has, quote unquote, by now come to be a profession that relies on consumer psychology, in which propagandists test the effectiveness of its various appeals, quote unquote, and only the catchiest ones survive. In a similar fashion, cloaked white supremacist sites repackage overt racism in the language of multiculturalism, thus deploying public relations savvy rhetoric intended to appeal to a large audience in order to manipulate and subvert previously agreed upon facts. This is a strategy that extends beyond extremist white supremacist cloaked sites to the larger mainstream culture. Evidence of this in the digital era is in clear sites such as conservapedia.com, created by Andrew Schlafly, Phyllis Schlafly's son, and intended to be an antidote to the supposedly liberal bias of the popular wikipedia.org, the quote-unquote free encyclopedia anyone can edit. Such attempts by the more mainstream branches of the American right to use digital media to challenge the quote-unquote liberal bias of encyclopedia definitions is similar to the strategy of cloaked white supremacist websites' use of digital media to challenge racial equality. Both strategies use digital media to call into question cultural values in favor of changing the audience's mind and persuading them of the site's political views. In this new political landscape, conservatives and white supremacists use the guise of cultural tolerance and a variety of digital media to engage in an assault on quote unquote fact based reality. This strategy draws on a fairly radical postmodern deconstructionism in which truth is no longer possible. When claims to knowledge and truth are entirely relative, then there can be no basis for equality or social justice in a democratic society. Basically, they're talking about PragerU, man. You know, this book was written in 2009 before YouTube blew up, before social media blew up, but still the fact remains, right? A lot of these websites, they just want to muddy the waters. The thing is, sites like PragerU, sites like Daily Wire, sites like Fox News, they don't actually want to change your mind about whether slavery was bad. They just want the question in there, in and of itself. They just want you to question, well, was the Civil Rights Voting Act actually a good thing? Well, were things better under segregation? Well, you know, maybe black people at this point in history, if they are poor, if they are uneducated, if they do have worse health comes, maybe it's because of, you know, their own choices. You know, that's just what they want to do. They just at least want the question out there. It's like what Trump does, right? Trump says, I heard people say, I don't know if it's true. I just heard people say Michelle Obama's a man. And you don't know whether Michelle is a man or not. She is a woman, of course, but he just puts doubt out there. That's the thing. These cloaked websites, their goal is this. They want to arm talking points to their white supremacist brethren, but also at the same time, they also want to muddy the waters for any normal white person or any normal person in general to just question basic facts, right? Like just the idea of other people, many other people believing the earth is flat sort of even raises the question of whether the earth is a circle at all. Something that was once agreed upon. Now that there are enough people believing that the earth is flat, that makes other people say, well, maybe it might be true. Maybe we don't always have to believe scientists. Maybe we can't always believe scientists. Stuff like that. You get what I'm saying? That's the point of these cloaked websites, this sort of propaganda, this gray propaganda that's out there. Continuing here. Adorno and other critical theorists associated with the Frankfurt School responded to similar challenges to a democratic society by reasserting the capacity of reason as a crucial strategy in the liberation of human beings from oppressive regimes of domination. Adorno's articulation of the connection between reason and liberation represents a precursor to epistemologies of Black/Chicana feminist thought, and both are particularly relevant for understanding and resisting racist propaganda in the digital era. To the extent that racist propaganda on cloaked websites succeeds, it does so in part by relying on the assumption that what they are presenting is unbiased and objective. In fact, every website, just like every book, film, work of art, or other cultural product, has an author and a particular point of view. Rather than seeing point of view as bias and therefore discrediting it, critical race feminists argue instead that it is only by taking standpoint into account that we can arrive at the truth. The experiential knowledge of those at the bottom of multiple hierarchies of oppression provides an understanding of the systemic forces at work in their oppression, quote unquote, that is less available to those at the top of those hierarchies. Along with lived experience as a criterion of meaning, this alternative epistemology places an ethic of caring central to the process of arriving at the truth. The goal of such a process of arriving at truth is self-conscious struggle that empowers women and men to actualize a humanist vision of community, an epistemology that envisions lived experience, an ethic of caring, and a humanist vision of community as integral to the process of arriving at the truth is what is required to uncover the racist propaganda concealed by cloaked white supremacist websites. Conclusion. Cloaked white supremacist cloaked websites represent a unique new form of white supremacy online because they disguise white supremacy in the rhetoric of multiculturalism and civil rights. While David Duke and others attempted to mimic the discourse of civil rights in print, for example, the National Association for the Advancement of White People, I could say that 100 times and it will not stop being funny. I don't know why. That is the funniest thing to me. If you ever want to cure my depression, if you ever want to make me laugh, just tell me there exists an organization called the National Association for the Advancement of White People. It always makes me smile for some reason. I don't know why. That is the funniest thing to me. That is hilarious. I want that shirt. I want to be that one nigga walking around the hood with the National Association for the Advancement of White People. I want me and Kanye West to meet in the studio and take one of them photos like this with our arms like folded on our chest and we got NAAWP on our chest like this. I need that shirt. I need that shirt. The National Association for the Advancement of White People. It always makes me laugh. I love it. I love it. Anyway, sorry. So while David Duke and others attempted to mimic the discourse of civil rights in print, the deception inherent in cloaked sites is a new twist, made all the more effective because of the medium of etymological challenge to the value of racial equality in a democratic society is that the landscape of the online universe is a relatively flat one, in which all content appears virtually equivalent without the critical ability to distinguish between sites. Thus, without at least some critical awareness of racial inequality, detecting and evaluating closed sites is difficult. All right. Mad Villainy said the laughing emoji. I'm telling you, that's funny, man. I need the NAAA. I need the National Association for the Advancement of White People shirts, man. That is sick. That is hard. That's harder than the White Lives Matter shirts. That's just funny as hell, bro. I love that. Anyway, I think in schools, in all public schools, everywhere in America, we need to teach internet literacy, and there needs to be a course about identifying propaganda in general, like how to identify propaganda, because unfortunately, a lot of people in America, everything you consume is propaganda, right? What you're watching right now, Simon Hill Keeps It Trill, is a bit of propaganda. It is, by definition, propaganda because I'm reading a text to you, giving my point of view, and trying to convince you of my point of view. This is literally textbook propaganda. And by the definitions of the types of propaganda that we learned today, white's propaganda, gray propaganda, and black propaganda, my propaganda is white's propaganda, even though I find that problematic because I'm a handsome, melanated chocolate man. It's white propaganda because I'm showing you my face, giving you my identity, and making it clear that it is a point of view coming from a specific section. You get what I'm saying? But regardless of that, the point is that every kid in America needs to learn internet literacy, needs to learn media literacy, needs to learn to be able to identify propaganda. I think in French schools, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think in all the schools in France, at least in high school, they teach their kids internet literacy and how to identify misinformation and disinformation online. And if that's not a mandated course, I heard that in France that it is a course that some kids are taking. We need that in America. We need that all over the world because how the hell do you still have people in 2024 believing in IQ science? How do you still have people in 2024 believing that there are different IQs inherent to certain races? How do we still have that? How do we still have certain people believing that there are certain characteristics and traits attributed to certain races? How do we have some people not knowing in America about the party switch when the Democrats used to be the racist white folks and the Republicans used to be the bleeding heart liberals? How do we still not have that in 2024? Right? How do we still not have people know so many things in America that you see repeated online ad nauseum? There needs to be like a course for every kid in school to learn about the internet, learn about media, and all that sort of stuff, right? It needs to be taught because the fact that martinlutherking.org was owned by a white supremacist and it got millions of hits showed me that Americans are stupid as fuck. Americans are dumb. Americans are dumb. They wouldn't be able to notice. Let's look at this website. Let's look at the martinlutherking.com website. I'm going to show y'all the man. This is the Martin Luther King website. And right under Martin Luther King's face, they got rap lyrics. Now, I know Martin Luther King looks like the baby. I know Martin Luther King does look like he'd had a few fire 16s in him. He did drop I Have a Dream, which is the bar of all bars. But to have martinlutherking.com and then right under it you have rap lyrics, hyperlink rap lyrics under Martin Luther King's face. Come on now. Come on now. Is this not like, does this not scream? Does this not scream middle-aged white man, small dick, hates black people, lives in Kansas? Does this not scream it? Just look. And then at the bottom it says, learn more about Kwanzaa. Come on now. Does this not scream middle-aged white man, Minnesota, small town, 40,000 people, daughter fucked the black guy, now he's mad? Does this not scream it? Does this not scream it on this website? And this website got millions of hits from stupid ass Americans who are unable to identify that this is a stupid racist website. Every kid in America needs to be able to identify something like this and say, that's dumb. That's dumb. That's dumb. You get what I'm saying? But y'all don't hear me though. Let's talk about Cassie's BBL. Let's talk about Diddy going to jail. Let's talk about all the other fuck shit happening in the world, right? Let's not talk about the white supremacists brainwashing a new generation. Let's not talk about the white supremacists training the next Peyton Gentrin, the next Brandon Tarrant, the next Dylan Roof, the next person that's going to walk in a church, a mall, a supermarket, and air that bitch out. Let's not talk about that. Let's talk about Cassie's BBL. And let's talk about BBL Drizzy or whatever Kendrick Lamar is going to say about Drake next. Let's not talk about the white supremacists who are about to slaughter the next group of people in a supermarket or in a church. Let's not talk about that shit, right? It's the internet. We're all here for the fuckery. We're all here for the fuckery, right? We don't want to learn. We don't want to read books, nigga. We don't want to read books, nigga. Make us laugh. Make us dance. Rap, nigga, rap. I'm tripping now. Let me wrap up this chapter, man. We're on chapter 7. We're almost finished with this book. I'm continuing here. All right. So one of the many promises of digital media is that it opens up the possibility for multiple perspectives. Understanding multiple perspectives is an important corrective to the racism, sexism, and homophobia generated by corporate-owned media outlets. And this is a vital contribution of participatory media. However, the idea of valuing multiple perspectives does not mean all perspectives should be valued equally. I repeat, the idea of valuing multiple perspectives does not mean all perspectives should be valued equally. If valuing multiple perspectives is the only standard, then we have no basis on which to critically distinguish between a cloaked website and a legitimate civil rights website. No way to evaluate the content at the King Center site or the material on Don Black's cloaked Martin Luther King website. The cloaked white supremacist sites examined here are grounded in an epistemology of white supremacy that seeks to undermine hard-won political battles for racial and ethnic equality by re-articulating an essentialist notion of white racial purity, and along with it, a sense of entitled privilege based on that whiteness. The usual approach of understanding multiple perspectives, quote unquote, is simply inadequate to the task of critically evaluating cloaked sites. Valuing multiple perspectives without regard to content means that there is no way to distinguish between white supremacy and racial equality, no basis for a vision of social justice. The shifting terrain of white supremacy online raises important questions about epistemology, how we know what we say we know, and knowledge claims in the digital era. In the following chapter, I investigate how young people, many of whom have come of age in the digital era, immersed in internet technologies, find and evaluate information about civil rights online and how they make sense of the cloaked white supremacist websites that they encounter. Mad Villainy said, a lot of fuck shit every day more fuck shit. Ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? We get 1,000 views if we start talking about how we hate black women. We get a million views if we start talking about manosphere. We get 10 million views if we start hating other black people. We get 20 million views if we start talking about conservative politics. We get 100 million views if we talk about we hate the immigrants and we want to kick the immigrants out. We get 1 billion views if we say how much we love the white supremacist capitalistic society that we live in. But when we're actually talking about trying to prevent the crazy, radical young white men who are getting turned up offline off crazy 4chan memes, we get 3 people in the chat. Get 3 people in the chat. That's right. But I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. I'm enjoying this, man. This is one of the illest books I've ever read. Very cool that I actually got the chance to read this, and we're actually very close to finishing. We're on page 157. The last 50 pages, I believe, are like footnotes. We're already on chapter 8 of this 10 chapter book. This has been exciting. I'm liking the reaction I'm getting so far. So let's try to wrap up with chapter 8. All right, we're gonna read chapter 8 today, and then we're gonna wrap it up here with chapters 9 and 10. Okay, we're gonna wrap up next live stream tomorrow with chapters 9 and 10 and finish this book. I'm very glad that we're very close to finishing. It's not easy staying on live this long. It's not usually what I do, but I'm glad that y'all are rocking with me and that y'all are gaining something from this. Hopefully, hopefully, hopefully. So, searching for civil rights, finding white supremacy, adolescents making sense of cloaked websites. It is essential in a democratic society that young people and adults learn how to think, learn how to make up their minds. They must learn how to think independently, and they must learn how to think together. So far as individuals are concerned, the art of democracy is the art of thinking and discussing independently together. The Fine Arts of Propaganda, 1939. The art of democracy is intricately linked to critical thinking, and both are facing new challenges as white supremacy moves into the digital era. An anecdote from a colleague illustrates these challenges. In 2005, I attended a small conference in New York hosted by the Anti Defamation League and the International Network Against Cyber Hate. The conference was attended by about the presence of white supremacy online. I ended up chatting with the scholar slash activist Ken Stern, who told me a story that illustrates just how effective cloaked sites can be. While Ken's son, Daniel, was attending Hebrew school, Daniel's teacher, a rabbinic student, gave the sixth grade students 3 web resources for a research project on the Holocaust. The web resource the teacher highlighted as the best of the 3 was IHR.org, the Institute for Historical Review. Oh, God. Think about that. Think about how crazy that is, right? This is in the early 2000s, right? 2005. A bunch of Jewish kids are at high school about to do a project on the Holocaust, and their Jewish teacher, who I am sure meant well, said, "Hey, I want you to look up some information on the Holocaust. You know, the time the white supremacists tried to eliminate our people from the face of the earth." And even the Jewish teacher, the rabbi, didn't know that the IHR.com was a site that was wholly committed to denying that the Holocaust even existed. Come on now. Come on now. Do we not need to teach internet literacy to every American? Do we not need to teach internet literacy to every single person when even the rabbi is linking to a website that talks about denying the Holocaust? And by the way, if any of you deny the Holocaust on my channel, if you don't think that 6 million Jews and innumerable numbers of Romanis or gays, transsexuals, communists, socialists were not killed in the Holocaust, get the hell off of my channel. Don't come around me. Don't come around me if you think that there is no Holocaust. Get off of this channel, unsubscribe. I don't want to talk to y'all if you think the Holocaust didn't happen. I'm not an anti-Semite. I don't hate Jewish people. I got nothing against Jewish people. I got something against Jewish white supremacists. I got something against Jews who are anti-black racists, but nothing against the Jewish people in general. And the Holocaust is wrong and evil. And anybody who entertains those ideas at this point in time is a sick person. I'll never forget. I was in university. It was like sophomore year. I was hanging out, smoking some dope, smoking dope. I was getting high. Y'all. I was getting high with my guy Milan. I'll never forget my guy Milan from Berkeley, and some white guy who I thought was like liberal and cool. Uh, at Milan's house, right? I believe the guy was like from Massachusetts or something. Came down to New Orleans to like study with us, right? And we got super high, and this guy started talking about how, hey, if I stand on top of the pyramids and I hold a fluorescent light bulb above my head, it would light up because the pyramids actually collect electric currents. And I was like, whoa, that's sick. I didn't even know that. And then he was like, yeah, also, the Holocaust, it was impossible for the Holocaust to happen because the doors that you see at the Holocaust museums, like in Auschwitz and stuff like that, they don't close all the way at the bottom. So how could the Jews be killed by gas if the gas could escape from the bottom of the doors. And I was like, whoa, where'd you go? How did we get here? I was like, where are you trying to go? Where are you trying to? I would love to know where that guy is now. And I totally forgot that guy's name. But that's an absolutely true story. I'll never forget. One of my favorite pictures I have of me is me with my long dreadlocks with a blue vest, hanging out with my guy Milan. He's got the mohawk, and I'm blowing big dope in the camera. I was looking hella G. I was looking like a straight, yeah, yeah. I was one of them. Anyway, I'll never forget that night that I was smoking dope at Milan's house, and this guy's trying to slide me like some Holocaust denial, like seeing if I would bite the bait. And I was like, it automatically it turned me off to the whole thing. And then, secondly, why doesn't it ever cross in any of these stupid white supremacist minds or Holocaust deniers' minds that maybe the doors that you see at Auschwitz or any other concentration camp memorial are not the actual doors that they had during the Holocaust? Like, doesn't that make sense? And let's really walk through all the Holocaust denial ideas. You get what I'm saying? Let's walk through most of the Holocaust denials, right? They say, the white supremacists say, it would be impossible for 6 million Jews to be killed because that would mean Hitler would have to kill 100,000 people per day or some innumerable number that seems impossible. But when we think about all the atrocities that the Nazis did, not only did they have concentration camps, they were slaughtering people when they walked into Poland, walked into Austria, came into Germany, went to Croatia. So yeah, I went to a place in Serbia where they basically rounded up a bunch of Jews in a park and shot them in the back of the head, right? As soon as they got there. So yeah, like of course it's possible for the Nazis to eliminate 6 million Jews. Duh. It's not that hard and impossible. Over that period of time, before the war and during the war, like the final solution was going on. There was ravages that were happening to the Jewish people. So I've never understood why the white supremacists, on one hand, say they hate the Jews. Then why are you constantly trying to always deny the fact that you killed them? If you're a white supremacist and you say like you hate Jews, what motivation at all do you have to then say no, but we didn't kill them though? That sounds pussy to me. That sounds pussy. If hypothetically, I don't hate white people, guys, I can't hate white people. You literally just saw me get a kiss from a big, beautiful, big booty white woman, right? I don't hate white people, but if I hated white people, and then supposedly, if there was any time when a bunch of black supremacists or whatever killed a bunch of white folks, I would say, yeah, we got the skull up. We ran the skull up on your bitch asses. You feel me? But the white supremacists, on one hand, they're so pussy. They say they hate Jews, or they really dislike Jews, or they hate the Zog government or whatever. But then at the same time, they say, but we didn't kill them though. What is it? What is it? Can y'all actually be men? This is why I don't respect the white supremacists, because not only do they hide their identities online, not only are they scared to actually talk that ish in public, but then every single thing that you could ever say, yeah, the white supremacists ran the score up on somebody else, they deny it. What type of pussy shit is that? For real. Imagine if you were in a gang and your gang is the Crips and you hate Bloods. But every time a Blood gets killed, all the Crips say, no. We never killed Crips though. We never killed Bloods though. It's impossible. It's impossible for us to kill Bloods. As Crips, we don't kill Bloods, but we hate them Bloods though. That don't make no sense. The white supremacists got the smallest dicks, the smallest hearts, the least amount of courage, and they are literally pussy. 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 What type of men claim to be supreme, but then constantly get cucked by a group of people that are literally only in the millions, in the tens of millions? There's hundreds of millions of white people and possibly way even more numbers of white supremacists than there actually are Jews. But then the Jews consistently cuck y'all. The Jews consistently take the whites in your own logic, because I don't believe this. I don't believe in any of this ish, but I'm putting myself in the minds of the white supremacists. So the white supremacists are telling me that they're the greatest, they're the best, they're the most supreme, smart, powerful, but consistently over and over, time and time again through history, through trickery, a smaller group of people who you guys have constantly bullied and picked on and killed throughout history, constantly are able to trick y'all into fucking yourselves over. That don't make y'all supreme then. And even when y'all did do heinous ish to them, y'all then say, no, but it's impossible for us to do it though. Pussy. I smell pussy. Is that you? Yeah, shout out to 50 Cent. All right. So anyway, I'm jumping into the comments right here. Go in here into the comments. All right, I see we got a white supremacist with John Saint. Okay. John Saint is a white supremacist who obviously has half of a brain, but this is why we have to constantly try to fight against white supremacy online, because John Saint is the type of person who would say, that different races have lower IQs, and John Saint also believes that the Holocaust did not happen, right? So, John Saint, I have to ask you, John Saint, will you answer this question? All right. John Saint, will you answer this question? Did the Holocaust happen or not? John Saint, answer that question, because I'm going to read the John Saint comments. He said, "What's in the tunnel, Rabbi?" Then he says, 2,750,000. No, 275,000. That's it. That's it. He says he's implying that's how many Jews were actually killed. All right. John Saint then says, and they were wood in reference to the doors of the concentration camps. And then he said most of the Jews died from typhus. So he says, okay, you don't understand. You only have half the story. I'm walking through the story through the minds of the white supremacists like you, John Saint. Now, John Saint, answer the question. John Saint, did the Holocaust happen? And secondly, do you believe in the superiority of the white race? And watch how John Saint does not answer the second question. John Saint is a pussy. Watch, because the white supremacists like John Saint will not answer that second question. And this will go to be a test for everybody here. Everybody here, watch how John Saint does not answer that question, because he is pussy. He is pussy, because he's going to lie and deny it. On one hand, he's going to say, or secondly, he will say something else to diffuse the question or to avoid it altogether, right? He won't answer the first or the second. Regardless, here, I'm going to jump into my guy, Kamal. Kamal left a comment here. He sent a globe emoji and then a hand clap. Kamal then says, most naive on the planet, America. Yep, Americans are very stupid. For me, of course. I try to be bright. I try to learn. Kamal said, I've had those 100 to 0 moments. Motherfucker said the South should have one brain whole America. Okay, I feel you on that, bomb. All right, Kamal said, cowardice, shit sickens me. I'd respect honesty from my worst enemy. Facts, facts. All right. See, John Saint is a pussy. What? Notice how John Saint did not answer the question. John Saint, you will not answer the question because you're pussy. You know exactly what I mean, but because you're a coward, punk, pussy, bitch, white supremacist, you will not answer the question. I will continue here. So anyway, I was reading the story about these little Jewish kids about doing a book report on the Holocaust or something like that. And the rabbi gave them the link to a website that is strictly about Holocaust denial. So the web resource the teacher highlighted as the best of the three was IHR.org, the Institute for Historical Review. Fortunately for Daniel, his father is an expert in recognizing white supremacy and anti Semitism and was able to intervene in this assignment. That Daniel's teacher, a rabbinical student, could be fooled by a cloaked site indicates just how effectively deceptive such sites can be. Ken's story about his son's experience is anecdotal evidence, to be sure, but this story resonated with my own experience with students in the computer lab who stumbled upon the cloaked MLK site. These sorts of experiences with cloaked sites stand in sharp contrast to the popular perception of young people as digital natives, quote unquote. An unfortunate turn of phrase meant to suggest that those who grow up with digital media have greater facility with it, as opposed to quote unquote immigrants who become familiar with digital media later in life. Perhaps young people who are fluent in digital technologies could easily detect cloaked white supremacist sites and distinguish them from legitimate civil rights sites, or perhaps not. I wanted a more systemic approach to investigate how young people make sense of cloaked white supremacist sites. What follows is a small qualitative exploration intended as a beginning toward such a systemic analysis. All right. So John Saint is once again typing in the comments, who are they superior to? Obviously, all right, are most whites, because you have a very low IQ or you're lacking a few chromosomes, sir, because the question is stated in the simple present tense for a qualitative group of people, meaning in all. Meaning if I said, hey, John Saint, what's the best pizza of all? And then you were to say, the best pizza to who? You would be retarded as fuck. John Saint, you are retarded as the motherfucker that has 2 extra chromosomes. You stupid son of a bitch. You stupid son of a bitch. If I were to ask anybody, hey, What's the best type of pizza? And then you were to say, the best type of pizza compared to what type of dumbass would you be? And then he's typed stupid shit like, I believe in the botanical construct. What a dumbass. Stupid, stupid son of a bitch. And this is why we need internet literacy. This is why we need to read books, people, so we don't end up like stupid motherfuckers like John Saint. I asked him a very basic, simple question. Did the Holocaust exist? Didn't answer that because he's pussy, because he's a white supremacist pussy. And then on top of that, secondly, do you believe in the superiority of the white race? That's a basic ass question that should be answered with a hell no as any reasonable person, because there is no such thing as a superior race of people, because race is a social construct that's not real and it was based on white supremacy to begin with. But John is a stupid son of a bitch. Stupid. Superior to who? Dumb, stupid son of a bitch. Eat a whole bag of baby dicks. God damn. God damn, I hate these people. Anyway, continuing here. Examining the text of web pages, discussion forums, and news groups is the method that has come to dominate the study of white supremacists online. Most difficult and less prevalent are investigations into the connections between online interaction and face-to-face social networks among extremists. Most vexing still, and least common, are studies of the web user. In other media, this type of research is called audience reception and explores how the listener, viewer, or reader interprets the best, whether the text is visual, as in films or television shows, or printed, as in novels or newspaper articles. A number of critics have suggested that while this is an important area of study, the terms audience and reception are rooted in old broadcast media and do not work well for digital media for a variety of reasons. When it comes to empirical explorations of how people find, read, and interpret extremist rhetoric or racist websites, there is scant research. An important exception to this is the work of Lee and Leitz, who examine how adolescents respond to what they call persuasive storytelling, quote unquote, online by hate groups. Lee and Leitz found only minimal effects on adolescents who were infrequently exposed to explicit hate messages. However, their research did not explore how adolescents might be exposed to these messages, and it only focused on explicitly racist sites and not on cloaked websites. This chapter is intended to address this gap in the emerging body of knowledge about race and the internet, and examines how teens find information online about race and asks how they interpret cloaked websites. For young people who have come of age during the digital era, the notion of doing research, quote unquote, does not mean going to the library. It means going online to use a search engine to find information. This shift in how young people look for and find information has a number of far reaching consequences about digital media and learning. Race and racism are part of this new digital era in ways both predictable and unexpected. Many adolescents, like many adults in the United States, are naive about matters of race and racism, and this naivete makes discerning cloaked white supremacist websites even more difficult. I contend that both digital literacy and critical race consciousness are necessary for understanding race in the digital era. How young people look for information about race, racism, and civil rights, and how they make sense of that information once they find it, are the questions to which I now turn. Going to the comments right here, Kamal said most Americans never pick up a book beyond school, and that's a shame, but that's why we're going to bring that information to the people. So I'm going to be reading books online. Book reacts will be a part of my channel now, along with the movie reviews, along with travel content, along with whatever the hell I want to do on this channel. So I hope you enjoy it, because I always want my content to be educational. I want it to be challenging. I want to inform myself, but I also want to inform you. And yes, we will be reading entire books, and this is the first book in our series, so I'm looking forward to doing more. Matt Villainy said, Baby Dicks is wild. Yes, John Saint is a person who should eat baby dicks, because instead of answering a basic question, he became a pussy, because now he's talking about reading H.P. Lovecraft, a science fiction writer. John Saint is telling us to read science fiction instead of answering the question about whether he believes the Holocaust is real. Now, I want to ask everybody this. For everybody black in the audience, or for anybody who's a decent goddamn human being, if you walked up to a person and said, hey man, or if you were having a beer with a guy and the topic of the Holocaust came up, and then if you asked this guy, hey man, do you think the Holocaust happened, or do you think it was a bad thing? And then this person said, what do you mean bad? By bad, what do you mean? Or then the person said, you want to read H.P. Lovecraft? Would you continue having beer with that person? Would you even think this person was worth talking to? Do you get what I'm saying? And yes, Matt Villainy jumped into the comments and said H.P. Lovecraft was racist. H.P. Lovecraft called his cat the N-word. H.P. Lovecraft named his pet cat a racial slur. And that's who John Saint wants us to read. John Saint is an idiot. He's an example of the white supremacy online. He's an example of the cowardice of the white race. My guy, Nelson Moreno, left the funniest comment. Yesterday, and I'm going to share it with y'all. He said, being called white in 2024 is an embarrassment. Being called white in 2024 is an embarrassment. Because even the white supremacists who come on black ass live streams like John Saint are too pussy. They're too goddamn pussy to actually say what's on their mind in a chat where nobody knows who they are. Can't even answer the question, did the Holocaust happen? And do you believe in the superiority of the white race? Can't even say it. If you asked me anything about what I believe, I would answer it in a heartbeat. I don't care where I'm at. I don't care if I'm in a Klan rally. I don't care if I'm back in Albania. I'll say white supremacy is real. Albania is the most racist country I've ever been to. And Kelly Rowland got some badass bolt-on boobies. I'll say that till the day I die. I don't give a fuck. That's what I stand on. That's what I believe. For real. Megan Thee Stallion booty probably stank. White supremacy is evil and it needs to be destroyed. And the white supremacists are small little dick pussies. And Kelly Rowland needs a better boob job. That's what I believe with my whole heart. And I'll say that till the day I die. But John Saint can't even talk about the superiority of the white race and whether the Holocaust happened in a place where nobody knows who he is, where he's obviously using a pseudonym. Pussy. Anyway, Kamal said, I said the same on our stream last week. They are quick to switch the subject and dodge the truth. Ain't that the truth, Kamal? All right. Continuing here. All right, searching for Dr. King and finding David Duke. Using a combination of experiments and interviews, I analyzed how a small sample, n equals 10, of racially, ethnically diverse young people, ages 15 to 19, made sense of cloaked white supremacy online. I recruited participants via the internet, asked them to use any search engine and any search terms they chose to find information about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and then asked them to do the same to find information about the goals of the civil rights movement, as if doing a report for school, quote unquote. Following that, I paired a series of legitimate and cloaked sites and asked the participants to tell me which of these sites they would use if doing a report for school, quote unquote. During both, I asked the participants to talk aloud, quote unquote, describing their decision-making process. 9 of the 10 participants selected the search engine Google. The remaining participant used the search engine yahoo.com. All of the participants used the same search engine throughout their interview and did not switch to another search engine. The participants also used similar search terms. The most commonly used search terms for the first scenario were Martin Luther King or Martin Luther King plus biography, and for the second scenario, the most commonly used search terms were civil rights movement, and civil rights goals. When asked how they evaluate the search engine results, most said they relied on the order the search results appeared on the screen as a valid and reliable way to evaluate whether or not a site was trustworthy. This was a consistent theme across the interviews and is reflected in this quotation from a participant, reporting that she would never, quote unquote, go beyond the first page of results in her research of a topic. I actually have never, I think in my life, gone to like the third page or the second page because I just stop at the first page. Because I mean, there must be a reason why everything's on the first page and the rest of the stuff is later. Study participant, age 16. In a sense, this young woman is correct when she says that there must be a reason, quote unquote, for the results on the first page to be listed there. There is a reason, and it is an algorithm created by software engineers at Google. Given the huge popularity of Google as the search engine of choice by so many, we might expect that there would be familiarity with how the search engine works. As it turns out, this is not the case. Actually, different search engines work differently, and the way Google works is through a fairly complex algorithm that includes a web crawling robot, the Google indexer, and a query processor. PageRank is Google's mechanism for ranking one page higher than another based on the results. Central to this mechanism are links from outside pages. Each link from an outside page to a website is, in Google's evaluation schema, a vote for the importance of that site. So while there is a reason that those results appear on the first page, it is not because someone sitting in an office at Google headquarters has read and evaluated each site and ranked ordered them based on an agreed upon set of criteria. In fact, because of the way Google's algorithm works, it is possible to intentionally manipulate the ranking of a site by linking to a page using consistent anchor text. This is commonly referred to as Google bombing and has been used a number of times as a form of political critique of the Bush administration. Thus, because people of a number of websites across the internet have repeatedly used the same linking anchor text. In 2007, anyone who typed the search results "miserable failure" into Google will find that the first result was a link to the biography of George W. Bush. When I asked the participants if they had ever heard of a Google bomb, not one said that they had or were perplexed and amused when I showed them the George W. Bush results for the miserable failure search. Trusting the results of the first page of Google might not be an issue for understanding race, except in two key circumstances. One, when searching for information on race, racism, and civil rights, cloaked white supremacist sites appear alongside results for legitimate sites. And two, people like the young woman quoted above implicitly trust the order of results as a valid and reliable mechanism for assessing trustworthiness. The cloaked site www.martinlutherking.org consistently appears third or fourth on the first page of results in Google when using the search terms Martin Luther King, and this, along with the URL, has implications for how young people find information about race, racism, and civil rights. Typical of the way participants in the research evaluated the cloaked site when it appeared in search engine results was this young woman's response. Responses from participants are indicated by A, questions and prompts from the interviewer, by Q, and descriptions of what is displayed on the computer screen by italic script. So, computer screen opens Google, use search terms Martin Luther King without quotations. Once the search results are returned, she scrolls the page quickly using the mouse button. Right now, I'm just reading the sites to see what they're about, to see which ones are easier for me. Okay, what kinds of information do you look at? What pops out at you? I guess maybe something like this would pop out, an article from about his life and impact. Okay, is that a link that you might click on? I would just look at it. I wouldn't click on it yet, but this one points her mouse on martinlutherking.org, link returned third in the list of results from Google. This one looks good. For anybody who's joining late, martinlutherking.org was a website created by a white supremacist. So this girl is doing the experiment, and the student is saying, yeah, I'd most likely click on martinlutherking.org because it showed up third in Google's rankings. And this all happened in 2009. Think about that, man. I graduated high school in 2009. Google had been around for at least 10 years. Most people had been to Google at least once in their life if they've been on the internet. And Google allowed martinlutherking.org to be the most prominent website in their search engine, right? Think about that. If this was "I love Al Qaeda" or "Bin Laden is my boo" or bomb Baghdad, 9/11 was great, something like that. If the website was titled that, do you think it would be the third thing on Google's website if you typed in Al Qaeda or Bin Laden or 9/11? No, no. But martinlutherking.org, owned by a white supremacist and then directly linking to Stormfront, was allowed to be in Google search engine. But y'all tell me, people like to tell me that there's no such thing as racism or white supremacy in today's age. People don't, it's literally right in our faces, bro. Think about that. And this website got millions of hits. Millions of impressionable young people, older people clicked on this website and were fed misinformation about Martin Luther King. And then we wonder why, about 10 years later, we have Republicans talking about, hey, we need to stop teaching about the civil rights movement and about all the turbulence in the 60s because, that's divisive. When secretly, we all know what it's about. They went to martinlutherking.org and got turned out. Got turned out. They got turned out off that misinformation, right? Anyway, continuing here. So you think you would click on that one in reference to martinlutherking.org, says the teacher? Yeah, says the student, because the site itself, it says martinlutherking.org. So I guess they're dedicated to that. Study participant age 18. So, here in the span of just a few seconds after typing in the search terms, looking for information about Dr. King, this young woman has come across the cloaked white supremacist website and evaluates it positively, along with the legitimate site about Dr. King hosted by the Seattle Times newspaper. In part, this participant is responding to the anchor of the site's universal resource locator. In other words, the fact that the web address is comprised of civil rights leaders' names makes it seem legitimate. She is also responding to the suffix or ending of the web address, the .org. This kind of response to the URL martinlutherking.org was a consistent theme throughout the interview. Participants understood the suffix .org to mean that a site was a legitimate source of information, as this young woman explains. So, the questioner, the student, no, sorry, the teacher says, okay, anything else about the URL that lets you know it's trustworthy? That's about it. Basically, like the source when it's coming from. I mean, if it's like a personal web page or something, they just have information about him. I wouldn't go there. And how do you know when it's a personal web page? How can you tell? Well, okay, like if it's .edu, then you know it has to do with education, like university or something. And you know, like this one scrolls over the results of a legitimate site hosted at Lucid Cafe, a web portal created and run by Robin Chu, a web developer and marketing executive in San Francisco. Lucid Cafe, that doesn't look too, I don't know, the title looks serious, but the URL, all right, based on the URL, you wouldn't go there even though the title and the description look okay. Yeah, and .org too. Yeah, and what does that mean for you? I don't know what it means actually. Organization? No, it's fine. I don't know. I don't mean what does it actually mean. I meant what does it indicate to you? Oh, okay. Again, it's more of a trustworthy website because .coms are everywhere and .org and .edu are more specific. Study participant age 18. So the fact that URLs ending in .com are more common everywhere leads this participant to conclude that the less common .org websites are more trustworthy for the most part. Internet literacy skills based classes have instructed web users to read the URL as a first step for evaluating the legitimacy of a website and to trust URLs ending in .org more than those ending in .com. Thus, this participant is doing precisely as she has been taught. While it is possible to read the URL of a site and sometimes ascertain where the site is hosted or who is sponsoring it, it is also possible for the site creator to disguise the nature of a site using a clever or nefarious domain name registration. In the case of martinlutherking.org site, the cloaking of white supremacist political and ideological goals began with Don Black registered the domain name and launched the site in 1998. This suggests that racial politics in the digital era have shifted to a new location, domain name registration. It also suggests the typical approaches to teaching internet literacy skills are inadequate on their own to meet the demands of this new form of struggle over meaning in racial politics. Also necessary is a basic understanding of racism and the struggles against it. Without at least a basic understanding of this, the possibility of being duped by a cloaked white supremacist site is much greater. The lack of understanding about racism and the civil rights struggle can contribute to an inability to recognize a cloaked site and is illustrated in the following interview. This is an account of the first 4.5 minutes from the time the participant begins the search scenario looking for information about Dr. King. Looking at the computer screen, Google results for search terms Martin Luther King and see what results come up. Am I looking for any particular website? No, just any website that comes up, maybe the first three. Okay, and I'm finding information on his life story, says the student. Computer screen, Stanford University site about Dr. King. Okay, this is the website by Stanford University, so I think it would be pretty well established and accurate. His biography is on here. Other sites that we found included computer screen, back to Google results, the Seattle Times of Martin Luther King on the civil rights movement, and computer screen clicks on the Seattle Times page, then back to Google results. Could you try clicking on some of those links and see what they also say, like once you get inside the website? Computer screen clicks on www.martinlutherking.org main page. Sure. There's a Martin Luther King pop quiz. There's some historical writing essays, sermons, speeches. So computer screen clicks on what seems to be a broken link on www.martinlutherking.org to historical writings. The link takes more than a couple of seconds to load, and she abandons it as a broken link. Then she skips to the truth about King link without comments and clicks on Death of the Dream link, subtitled The Day King Was Shot. The student says there's information here about the day he was shot. It has some photographs of Dr. King the day before his death and some information about what happened the night before he died, which is not apparently public knowledge, or it's not like common knowledge. Going to the computer screen, goes back to scrolling over the links on the right, clicks on suggested books, and on that page, several titles appear, including a picture of David Duke on the cover of his book, My Awakening. Then there's some information on some books that were written by Dr. King, biographies that were written by about him by other people. Computer screen, clicks on Truth About King page. Do you know who that person was referring to David Duke? No, I have no idea. Computer screen, clicks back to the suggested book page. The teacher says, David Duke, have you heard of him? The student says, no, you've never heard of him? Who is David Duke? He's a Klan leader. Oh, is he? I had no idea. I actually don't know much about the civil rights movement at all. Computer screen, reading David Duke book description more closely now. Interesting. It's interesting how that would be on Martin Luther King's website. Study participant, age 18. In less than 3 minutes from when she began using a search engine to look for information about Dr. King, this young woman has selected a cloaked white supremacist site and is reading a page that contains the views of David Duke, an avowed white supremacist, yet she does not recognize this site is cloaked. Consistent with conventional internet literacy skills training, she is reading the URL as legitimate. What is lacking here is not her internet literacy skills, it is her understanding of the historical context of racism in the United States and David Duke's place in it. As she says, I actually don't know much about the civil rights movement at all, although it may be possible to have an understanding of racism and the civil rights struggle against it in the United States and still not know who David Duke is. Not knowing seems to suggest a lack of critical awareness about contemporary racial politics. This young woman is certainly not alone in her lack of critical awareness, and it is not surprising given the push towards a mediocre testing-based educational system that lacks critical thinking in general and is completely absent any analysis of racism, either historical or contemporary. Evaluating civil rights online, photographic evidence, and visual cues. When asked to evaluate the difference between the legitimate site and the cloaked site, participants use a variety of strategies, including examining digital photographs and visual cues. The web is visual as well as hypertextual medium. As such, those who have grown up using the web expect to find visual and photographic images in their search results. Indeed, they rely on these as important sources of information, as this young man explains while exploring the legitimate voices of civil rights website. This site looks good. I mean, it has a lot of pictures and photos, so you can see for yourself what happened. Study participant, age 18. Seeing photos as a window into what happened was a consistent theme across the interviews. Here, another participant describes her initial impression of the cloaked Martin Luther King site. First thing I noticed is the colors, and although the colors are duller, they're in black and white. And his picture, the picture of Martin Luther King, that makes a major difference because it's this picture that attracts all your attention to it. Study participant, age 17. And a third participant describes her impression of the Seattle Times use of photographic images this way. Well, they have a photo gallery, which I would probably click on because photography interests me. So, okay, would that be useful to you in doing your report on King? And if so, computer screen clicks on black and white photograph of Mr. King kissing and smiling Dr. King. There is a caption to the right. Well, I like this photo. Without even reading the caption, I already know what he looks like. So I know that's him, that's his wife, and it looks like a good occasion. Study participant, age 16. Visual images are not simply decoration for a site, but carry messages, convey meaning, and suggest connotations for these participants. The expectations of and reliance on visual images was consistent across all the interviews. Without visual images, a particular website was not only deemed less reliable, it was simply less interesting and often discarded as a possible resource, as this participant describes in her assessment of a site that was text only. This site seems awfully wordy. I don't know what I would use this one. I don't know that I would use this one. Study participant, age 15. In particular, images that appear to be historical were a significant part of what the young people in this study were looking for and expected to find when they went online to search for information about Dr. King or the civil rights movement. And photographic images seem to carry the weight of authenticity for them because they reportedly allow one to see what happened, quote unquote. This reliance on the supposed veracity of photographic images is ironic at a time that some have referred to as the post photographic era. In the digital era, the widespread use of software that can alter photographs in ways that are virtually imperceptible to the untrained eye makes photography less a window to the truth and more of an act of interpretation. That that this has significance for racial politics became evident in 1994 when O.J. Simpson was arrested and a photograph of him appeared on the cover of Time magazine in which the color of his skin had been tinted several shades darker than his actual skin tone. Aside from photography, the teens reported that they relied heavily on other visual cues when evaluating civil rights information online. Background and text color, font, layout, and the entire graphic user interface (GUI) of websites were primary criteria used to evaluate whether or not a site was trustworthy, as the participants describes in her assessment of one of the cloaked sites. This site looks like someone, just an individual created it. It doesn't look very professional. Here, a site that doesn't look quote unquote professional is deemed an untrustworthy source of information. Conversely, a site that has a GUI that gets positively evaluated is deemed to have trustworthy content. The distinction between a site that is professionally designed and one that an individual, quote unquote, created is an important distinction here, as this participant illustrates in her evaluation of the paired website. Computer screen clicks on the cloaked MLK site. The student says, "This one certainly looks less professional," and the teacher says, "What tells you that it looks less professional?" It doesn't have a clean layout like this one. The computer screen clicks back to the King Center. "Okay, and so what does that mean? What do you believe about the site of the people who created it?" "Well, this one was designed like they hired someone to design it." Study participant age 16. In these examples, both the participants take visual cues from graphic design about the trustworthiness of the information contained there. While visual cues are important elements in evaluating web content, they can also be easily manipulated. If the cloaked websites under investigation here made use of quote unquote more professional web design, graphics, and layout, it would make them much more difficult for these young people to distinguish their illegitimacy. Critical race consciousness and assessing bias online. Thinking critically about race is crucial to be able to distinguish cloaked websites from legitimate civil rights websites, because this is ultimately a political distinction. Unless we are able to think critically, all websites are reduced to the level of personal opinion without reference to the power relations that imbue racial politics. And without a critical race consciousness, once one website is just a legitimate, quote unquote, or biased, quote unquote, as another. A number of the young people in the study evaluated websites in a way that reflected a lack of critical race consciousness, and it made evaluating the site more difficult. Going to the computer screen, clicks from cloud cloaked site to the King Center site. Well, in looking at this site, it appears to be created by his widow or his family, so it could be biased. Study participant age 17. In this instance, the legitimate civil rights website sponsored by the King Center is evaluated as less than reliable source of information because it is affiliated with Mrs. King and therefore likely quote unquote biased. The young woman is doing what she has been taught in skills-based approaches to internet literacy, to look for bias, quote unquote. Yet in this instance, it leads to the erroneous conclusion that the King Center site might not be a good source of information about civil rights of Dr. King. While the King Center's site certainly presents information from a point of view, it is precisely this point of view, situated in the struggle of the civil rights and against racism, that gives it credibility. Another teen assesses bias in a cloaked site. The teacher says, "Do you know who published this site? Who's behind it?" Going to the computer screen, looking at graphic at the top of high self-esteem for many American slaves, page on American Civil Rights Review. Ugh. Says the student, "Courier and Ives," and the teacher says, "No." Computer screen. Spends some time clicking through the site, then comes to a page that has all the badges on it and a copyright link to copyright legalese on a page hosted by Cornell University. The student says, "Is it Cornell?" The teacher says, "No." Going to the computer screen, reading from the text on the page above slavery, American Civil Rights Review. The student says, I mean, I don't think I would disagree with it. I'm sure there are some slaves that were treated well. Ugh. So I can understand their point of view. There's always two sides to everything. Kill this kid. Somebody kill this little 17-year-old boy. Kill him. In this case, the young woman determines this site. Somebody kill this young woman. In this case, the young woman determines that this site represents just another quote unquote point of view, another side of a two-sided argument. There's no two sides to slavery. She is also unable to ascertain who it is that's publishing the site, which is hosted by anti-Semite and racist Frank Weltner, whose rewrites of history would have us believe that plantations were quote unquote sanitary, humane, and relaxed workplaces rather than institutions predicated on human misery. As in the previous example, this illustrates how a lack of critical thinking about racial politics offline can lead to misreading online. For young people who possess critical race consciousness, recognizing cloaked websites is within their reach. The following is how another teen approached the same cloaked website created by Frank Weltner. So the student says, so I'm looking at the URL and it says American Civil Rights Review /slavery. So I'm looking for the main thing. It says American Civil Rights. So it's probably something that I would depend on. And now I'm looking at the picture of cotton plantation on the Mississippi River. And you know, plantations and slaves are related a lot. So that relates to slaves. I'm going to just scroll down. There does seem to be useful information. Computer screen, reading from the American Civil Rights Review. The student reads, idyllic view of American slavery. They just have pictures. I would rather have, they're actually talking about how the artist basically portrayed the slaves. Going to the computer screen, reading from the American Civil Rights Review. The student says, now notice how the artist has painted the slaves in relaxed positions. Going to the computer screen, pause, reads silently. It kind of sounds like I'm reading this. Were the slaves mistreated? It says sometimes, quote unquote. Going to the computer screen, point to screen. And that just throws me off because I think, yes, slaves were mistreated all the time. And then it says sometimes, quote unquote. And so what does that mean? What do you think now that you've read that? Now I don't think it's accurate anymore because it says, going to the computer screen, sometimes, but most probably no more than were other workers, including whites. I highly would disagree with that. It sounds so false to me because most of the slaves, they were all black, and white people would not have been treated the same way. And then it goes into reading. And then it goes into, quote unquote, Europeans were sometimes given the hardest jobs, quote unquote. When you're talking about slaves and then you're going to Europeans, which were obviously not treated the same as slaves because the slaves weren't even treated like people. So that just throws off everything. Going into the comments here, Nelson Moreno says, two sides to slavery, quite interesting. Nelson is the king of the comment section. Nelson got the fire jokes. He's got the fire jokes. There's no two sides to slavery, guys. No two sides to slavery. Continuing here. The teacher says, so now what do you do with this site? You said before that the URL looked good and it might have some useful information. The student says, I wouldn't use it. The teacher says, you wouldn't use it? The student says, no, because even if I find other information that seems accurate, this just makes the whole thing biased to me, because to me, the answer would be yes. There's no sometimes or no, it's yes. So I wouldn't even use this. Study participant age 18. Why didn't this woman include the races of the students as well? Because I think this is a black ass kid. Keisha. This is Keisha. Keisha, Aisha, Daquan, Tyrone. Tyrone would answer this way. Not no Clayton. Not no Clayton Bixby would answer this way, but Tyrone, Keisha, Jaquan, Dequarius, Demarcus, they would answer saying, yeah, slavery was always bad. And the Europeans were not given the worst jobs on the plantations, right? Why wouldn't you include the races of the students, right? Anyway, continuing here. Here, the participants decide to not use the cloak site based not on evaluation borrowed from her internet literacy skills, but rather her ability to think critically about race. She reads the text about slaves being mistreated sometimes and says, that just throws me off. Ultimately, she decides the site is not a credible source of information and she would not use it. And even with her negative evaluation of the site, she uses the same language as the previous two interviews when she says that the site is quote unquote biased. context, slipping back into the skills-based language of internet literacy curricula. New ways of thinking about racism in the digital era will have to move beyond two-dimensional notions of bias in which there are two sides to everything. Epistemology and white supremacy in the digital era. The way that the young people who participated in this study do or do not make sense of cloaked white supremacist websites tells us something about epistemology and white supremacy in the digital era. For example, the effectiveness of cloaked domain names such as www.martinlutherking.org or www.americancivilrightsreview.org rest in part on the racial naivete of their target audience, particularly a white audience, unaccustomed to taking racial matters into account. If the technical cues of rudimentary graphic design and layouts are resolved, reliance on the usual hints about web credibility will not be enough to distinguish cloaked sites from legitimate ones. Instead, it will become that much more difficult to parse the white supremacist rhetoric that exploits the vocabulary of multiculturalism and political victories that championed racial equality and social justice. In the digital era, discerning white supremacy online requires an epistemology that recognizes the importance of the standpoint of those making claims to quote-unquote truth, incorporates the lived experience of racial and multiple oppressions, and places an ethic of caring and human community at the center. Obviously, unsuspecting or racially naive white people are not the only ones who read these cloaked sites. People of color, particularly youth of color, also read cloaked sites. For young people of color, reading cloaked sites means having their own culture and history distorted in the retelling. And this is characteristic of the epistemology of white supremacy. This, however, is not new or unique to digital media. People of color have had their culture and history distorted by whites, both of those and without good intentions, for many centuries. This is where youth of color who can draw on their lived experiences of racism may have an advantage in critically evaluating these sites. If they draw on lived experience of everyday racism and do the critical work of evaluating who is creating the ideas contained in cloaked websites, then they may have an advantage over those steeped in the epistemology of a white supremacy that reinforces illiteracy about racism. Jumping into the comments here. All right. So John Saint is a pussy. John Saint, you've lost your card as a man. John Saint, you cannot even talk in my live chat. John Saint, as a man, I do not respect you. I do not respect you as a man, and nobody respects you as a man because you couldn't even answer a basic question. You bitch-made pussy. I hope your mama dies. John Saint, I hope your mama falls off a cliff for birthing your bitch ass. Because what type of man can't even answer a basic ass question where you purport to be so smart and intelligent? A basic ass question, and let's repeat it, guys. Everybody saw the question I posted, and John is an embarrassment to the white race. John is an embarrassment to the white race. John, of course I'm not human. I am a God to you. John, I am God. When you look at a black man, you are seeing God. Of course I'm not human to you subhuman bitch. You bitch ass, punk ass, pussy ass motherfucker. Listen, man, I asked him a basic ass question. John Saint, did the Holocaust happen? He got pussy and he couldn't even answer. He couldn't even talk to God. And then when Black God asked John Saint a question again, Black God asked him this. And secondly, do you think there is superiority of the white race over other races? The question is in the chat, and John Saint didn't answer. All right? All right. So John Saint is a bitch ass pussy motherfucker. I hope his mother dies a horrible death. Fuck him and fuck everything he stands for. Anyway, going into the comment section. Nelson Moreno says, despite making up 48% of the population, white males make up 70% of sex offenders. John Saint, you pedophilic son of a bitch, go touch some kids and get the fuck off my live stream, pussy. Anyway, Nelson Moreno says, just posting stats. Yes, John Saint, you're most likely a small dick, little dick pedophile who has to come around Black Daddy, Black God, acting like you big and bad, but you can't even answer basic questions, you punk pussy son of a bitch. Fuck you. Fuck your mama. Anyway, continuing here. Conclusion. Understanding any element of culture, as Wendy Griswold reminds us, must involve an investigation into how people use it and attempt to make sense of it. This is no less true with the internet. And here I have attempted to examine how people, particularly young people who often rely heavily on the internet in their knowledge gathering, make sense of cloaked sites. What I find is that the young people who participated in this study were, in fact, fooled by cloaked sites. Using a popular search engine to look for information about an important civil rights leader, the young people I observed moved quickly and seamlessly from legitimate sources of information such as Stanford University and the Seattle Times to the cloaked sites hosted by Don Black without realizing it. Therefore, I conclude that cloaked white supremacist sites are accessible and easily within the knowledge landscape of young people using search engines to find information about civil rights. The threat posed is not the shrill panic over possible recruitment, but rather is an epistemological hazard. That is, danger that the ideas and values of racial equality will be undermined and eroded. Cloaked websites are an attempt at the discursive production of uncertainty about racial equality. Assessing the relative merit of online content within the landscape requires more than internet literacy. In a skills based approach to internet literacy, we often learn to quote unquote look at the URL or domain name of an initial step for evaluating whether the content at a particular site is worthwhile. Yet, this way of knowing whether or not a site contains legitimate civil rights information leads to more confusion rather than less. In this way, the domain names themselves are part of the epistemology of white supremacy online. And in order to evaluate these with a discerning eye, one must incorporate a critical understanding of racial inequality alongside other skills for assessing content online. This research is limited because it is a small qualitative study drawing on a non random sample of urban adolescents in New York City who responded to an internet advertisement for the study. Future research should include a randomly selected sample not drawn from those who are likely to respond to an ad on the internet. A more comprehensive study would include a larger sample size and perhaps a purposive sampling of specific populations by age. In addition, teen girls were overrepresented in the sample, and more research is needed on teen boys and their use of the internet. The focus here is on urban young people from New York City who have grown up using digital media. Future studies would do well to expand beyond this demographic and examine the way that web users from rural areas, from other cities and other countries, and from a range of age groups make sense of cloaked sites. Even with these limitations, the findings from this small study are an initial step toward understanding how people make sense of cloaked sites. For those readers primarily interested in race, the findings suggest that it is important to understand digital media and its relationship to the contested terrain of race, racism, and civil rights. For those readers primarily interested in internet technologies and digital media, these findings suggest that it is important to think critically about race, racism, and racial equality in trying to understand emerging online worlds. This research also has implications for those readers who are in the classroom and increasingly faced with issues of digital literacy as we all rely more heavily on the internet. These issues are particularly urgent when we rely on the internet as a source of information about race, racism, and civil rights. Given the context of cloaked white supremacy online, it is imperative that we move beyond a skills-based approach to internet literacy that would have us assume that, quote unquote, looking at the URL is a sufficient filter in determining the credibility of the site. Trying to understand a cloaked website exclusively in terms of a skills-based internet literacy which lacks critical thinking about race and racism is doomed to fail. The emergence of cloaked white supremacist websites calls for different and multiple kinds of literacies, a literacy of digital media and new literacies, not merely of tolerance, but also of social justice that offer a depth of understanding about race, racism, and multiple intersecting forms of oppression. At stake in this shifting digital terrain is our vision for racial and social justice in a democratic society. Since both the internet and white supremacy online are global in the information age, our understanding of racial and social justice must be globally informed. It is global efforts to combat white supremacy online that I turn to the next chapter. All right, awesome. So we just wrapped up chapter 8 of cyber racism. In our next class session, live stream, whatever you want to call it, we're ending this book. We're going to part 4, fighting white supremacy in the digital era. We're going to go to solutions on how to get rid of these small dick, pedophilic, sick, disgusting losers who play as white supremacists online, spread their hateful propaganda, and what we could do to fix the internet for the next generation. That's what's going to be the topic for the next live stream. We're going to read chapters 9. We're going to start with 9, combating global white supremacy in the digital era, and chapter 10 as well. This has been a wild live stream. I want to give a shout out to everybody who came into the chat. Shout out to my guy Nelson Moreno. Shout out to Mad Villainy. Shout out to my guy Kamal. Shout out to my beautiful big booty wife, Act Dennis Shaheen. Shout out to Avery Adams. Shout out to Craig Mack. Shout out to Ozzy as well. This was a very fun live stream, man. I'm going to read some comments right here. All right, so my guy Nelson Moreno says John Saint's mom doesn't even like him. All right, Nelson Moreno says John Saint mom was on a BBC binge with her Snow Bunny friends while he was starving at home. Nelson Moreno then says John Saint is a mix between a Neanderthal and a yeast infection. All right. Oh God, the roasting of John Saint. But this is another thing. This is the interesting point. And let's listen, guys. Everything the white supremacists are saying in my live stream chat, people like John Saint in my live stream chat are proving the stuff about white supremacy online. Because this person just said, John Saint, he said he's actually a black lesbian Jew. He's not. He's not at all a black lesbian Jew. But we spoke about this, I believe, in chapter 3 or 4. On the internet, people play different identities, right? No black lesbian Jew talks about the Talmud or believes in white racial supremacy or doesn't believe the Holocaust happened. All the stuff that John Saint believes in, right? John Saint doesn't believe 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust. John Saint believes that white people are superior to black people. He's too pussy to say it, so I'll say it for him, just like how Kanye West had to speak on behalf of Nick Fuentes and all the other stuff like that, or Candace Owens had to speak on behalf of Ben Shapiro, right? The white supremacists are small little dick losers who are unable to actually verbalize their own opinions, so they got to run behind Black Daddy. They got to run behind black gods like me to actually try to express their own points of view. So John Saint is pretending to be a black lesbian Jew. And that goes to show how white supremacy is online, right? Like these people pretend, they put on cosplay, they put fake things onto their profiles and into their texts or their bios and things like that. They're not actual men. They're not actually supreme at all. Their actual activity online, like John Saint, prove that the whites are actually not supreme. Because they don't come online and show their face. They're never outside to kill the people like me. I drop my location every single time. I let y'all know where I'm at all the time. I'm not that hard to find or locate or talk to. Anybody can meet me at any moment. But people like John Saint just come online and say shit like name the Jew. But John Saint, I give you a challenge. John Saint, if you really hate Jews that much, you black lesbian carpet munching faggot, if you are a black lesbian carpet munching faggot like you say you are, John Saint, I dare you tomorrow, since you want to stay online and talk about killing Jews, I dare you to go kill some Jews tomorrow. John Saint, I want you to be a saint for the cause of white supremacy. Go out tomorrow to your local synagogue and air that bitch out. Do it. Do it. You are not a man, John Saint. You're not even a good, strong butch bitch. A real butch bitch would actually do the job. Name the Jew. How about this? You go slay the Jew. Go do that. How about you go kill some black people? Go kill some Muslims. Go do what you want to do as a white supremacist, John Saint. Go ahead and do it. But you pussy. The white supremacists are pussy. I've made my case. I made my case. Because what did the boy say? He said LOL. Because that's not what he's about. All he is about trolling. All he is about spreading his stupid propaganda. These people are pussy. These people are pussy. If I hated white people, I'd smack a white man every day. I don't hate white people. I don't go online talking about name the Jew. What a fucking stupid dumbass. Anyway, Nelson Moreno said, I made the Bukkake video with John Saint's mom, and he enjoyed it. John Saint tried to sneak into Diddy's house. Sounds about right. That tracks. Anyway, guys, my name is Simon Hill. Nelson Moreno says the white race is getting slowly choked out, and Saint is trolling on YouTube chats. Absolutely. John Saint, your race is literally going extinct. Them birth rates going down. You letting the Turks, you letting the Negroes from Africa, you letting the Arabs from North Africa run all up in Europe, run all up in your mama's house, run up all in your little sister's panties, and you online in my live chat, and you ain't picked up a gun yet, you big pussy bitch. You big pussy son of a bitch. You white supremacists are all pussy, all talk online. I want you to go air that bitch out tomorrow, John Saint. Do what you said you do what you say you really about, John Saint. Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. All right. Anyway, my name is Simon Hill. Y'all tune in for the next live stream. We're gonna finish up this book next time. Fighting white supremacy online in the digital era. Y'all be easy outside, and peace.